Good morning, everyone. This is the Economic Development Committee work session. Before we start dealing with important things related to the budget, that exciting budget that the county executive sent to us, we are going to first talk about expedited bill 13-26, building permits, immigration detention facilities, Eyes Out Act. As everyone knows, the council never really deals with legislation during the budget, but I made the exception of taking only immigration-related bills just because of the urgency that we have in our nation. So we're going to kick off this session today with that bill, which is led by Councilmember Glass, Council President Natalie Fanny Gonzalez, Councilmember Stewart, Fritzen, Katz, Evans, Yawando, Ming, Sells, Council Vice President Balcon, and Councilmember Lukie. So that means every single person joined on this bill. With that, I'm going to turn it to Councilmember Glass to kick us off, and then I'll turn it to staff so we can go through this bill. I don't want to say quickly, but efficiently, because we have a lot going on today. Appreciate you. You want to say something?
And I appreciate you, Madam President, Madam Chair. As you noted, this expedited piece of legislation, the Eyes Out Act, is being supported by every single member of this council because we are sending a signal to our community that we want to protect every resident, and we see what is happening up in Western Maryland, where ICE and federal agencies are attempting to build an immigration detention center, and we want to make sure that we get ahead of that and say that ICE is not welcome to do so here in Montgomery County. We want to make sure that every resident feels welcome, safe, and protected, and we are being proactive unanimously, collectively, wholly as a community, and I very much appreciate the Council President for making the time during our very busy budget season to accommodate this and other pressing matters that are before us. So with that, I'll yield back to be efficient.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask DPS to please also come forward. With that, can our legislative attorney kick us off?
Good morning, committee. So expedited bill 1326 was introduced on March 3rd, and it does two things. First, it defines an immigration detention facility, which was not previously defined in county code, and it prohibits DPS from issuing both a building permit or a use and occupancy permit for a privately owned immigration detention facility. For the definition, it would be any building, facility, or structure used in whole or in part to house or detain individuals for civil immigration violations. This is very similar to a definition that is in state law currently. And then for the building permit and use and occupancy permit, I will flag here that the fiscal impact statement actually did note that because part of the definition says in whole or in part, there'll of course have to be a case-by-case determination when permits come in, because for a lot of these we've seen it's partial reuse of a building instead of an entire building. So a public hearing was held on March 24th. Testimony noted poor conditions of ICE and that it disrupts communities and threatens families, and supported the bill, noting county facilities shouldn't be used for ongoing legal and humanitarian violations. There's also an RESJ impact statement. The impact statement was positive, noting positive impacts on racial equity and social justice in the county. It also talked a bit about trust policies. I know you've seen that in some of the other RESJ statements, and noting that this would be an equitable policy proposal. The climate assessment actually noted little to no impact on addressing climate change goals, which doesn't often happen in our building permit ones. But the idea here was that more often ICE is purchasing an existing building, and that repurposing has fewer greenhouse gas emissions than building a whole new building. And a quick note here, DPS has confirmed there's some questions about how building permits work for government versus private entities. If a federal agency is leasing privately owned buildings and spaces, they do typically go through that building permit process. Okay, so moving on to page 3. Two more impact statements here. Not expected to impact revenues or increase county expenditures for the fiscal impact statement. A lot of interesting things in the economic impact statement. On the one hand, it would reduce opportunities for construction firms and people who operate detention facilities, but it would also have potential benefits to businesses that are experiencing workforce and revenue disruptions because of immigration enforcement. So overall, the bill is likely to protect broader groups of both resident and U.S.-born workers, so the economic impact likely leans positive. As some background here, there have been, as you've noted, many immigration bills floating around the states and the county and neighboring jurisdictions. I have a list of them for you at the bottom of page 3 into the top of page 4. The theme you'll probably notice is everyone is taking a slightly different approach. And so Howard County, as noted, had revoked a building permit and then issued emergency legislation saying only a government agency can apply. Baltimore County similarly said if not owned and operated by the county or state, any detention center, immigration or not, is prohibited. The Attorney General recently sued the Department of Homeland Security, alleging that ICE did not follow NEPA and the APA. And then there is a state bill. Sindai is on Monday. I know you're very excited about that. So by Monday, we'll know the status of that pending bill. In terms of this bill, the impact is actually a bit limited. I do not believe that we would be preempted even if that bill passed, because what it says is that the detention centers are only allowed in a zone that expressly allows them, which is not the bill before you. And then lastly, Baltimore City actually did it through zoning and just banned all detention centers that way. So again, the intent is to prevent private corporations from similar actions in the county, and I'm here for any questions.
That's very straightforward. Does anybody have any questions before we get into the amendment? No? No questions? Does DPS have anything else that they want to add that hasn't been stated? And before you even said anything, I want to say thank you for being such an amazing partner on this too.
Appreciate that, Madam Chair. Nothing to add. I just commend the chair of the committee for coming up with this. I asked the same question as soon as I saw what happened in Howard County. Said, what is the county stance on this? We need to have safeguards in place, and I'm happy to see that you all, came up with something.
And you know what? I don't think you realize this, but the fact that you are stating that you were also concerned and you were wondering what we can do, I think that speaks highly of the people who work in this county. So thank you. With that, we have an amendment that I think is moved by Councilmember Luque, who I think will make this bill stronger. Because at the end of the day, we're trying to ensure that whatever lawsuits we're going to be facing in the future, because that's just reality, we're going to make sure that we're going to have everything in our power to have a secure victory with those battles. So I'm going to ask Councilmember Luque to please describe her amendment. And thank you for being so proactive about it.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you to Councilmember Glass. And of course, as noted, everyone on the council sponsors this bill, right? And truly, as everything was unfolding with Washington County and then with the Howard County scenario, which I want to be clear, that was a project of the Biden administration, but it wasn't something that Howard County government recognized was related to the Department of Homeland Security or ICE enforcement, because it was a private entity that had applied for the permitting. And everyone is trying to do whatever they can to rein in an administration that isn't following the law, period, full stop. My proposed amendment is related to trying to make sure that whatever we're doing here doesn't violate the Supremacy Clause of the United States Constitution, because as written, I believe it does. It has challenges that are long-standing and established under the doctrine of intergovernmental immunity, which, to be clear, originated from a case in Maryland in 1819, McCullough v. Maryland, and hasn't changed, right? Like the findings there and the holdings there have not changed in all these many years. So my hope was that we would do something that actually gives the county something to work with in terms of managing what may become a situation here in Montgomery County, as it has in both Washington County and Howard County. So to that end, I have proposed an amendment that, because we can't outright prohibit, period, either a private entity or the federal government from engaging in something which is exclusively a federal function. That is a very simplistic way of explaining the doctrine of intergovernmental immunity. I can, of course, explain it in greater detail, but I know the committee's got other work to do today. And so my goal in the amendment that I have proposed is to make the federal government comply with its own law, right? Because there is a series of laws that the federal government must comply with, which in the case of the lawsuit that the Attorney General has brought in the Hagerstown facility matter, the federal government did not comply with at all, didn't even bother with. And to be clear, under that federal law that Homeland Security must comply with, they must do so before they sign the contract with any private entity. So I want to give DPS a tool to say, all right, you're not getting anything from us unless you've demonstrated 100% full compliance with your own law. Because these are people who don't like to comply with their own laws or any laws at all. And I want to give you something so that when they don't, and you do have to go to court, you have tools to engage and battle and be on the right side of things. Because we can't blatantly just say, no, you can't do that here, just like we can't as a state or a local government ban a military base, because that's an exclusively federal function. And it doesn't matter whether it's a public contractor or not. And Howard County's law is aimed at the transparency aspect of it. Like, who is this really for? Because that's what was going sideways there. So with that, I would ask that the committee consider the amendment in order to give the county appropriate tools with which to manage this potential situation, and do the best we can to protect against something which is exclusively a federal function, but we need to make sure they've followed their own laws. Thank you.
So moved. Moved by Councilmember Lorencel, second by Councilmember Balcom. Does anybody have any questions? I think it was crystal clear, and I think it makes this bill stronger. And I want to thank you for putting it forward. Councilmember Glass.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate Councilmember Luedke using her legal prowess to introduce this amendment and to give some historical perspective. Unfortunately, I cannot support the amendment, and the reason I cannot support the amendment is because we are dealing with a lawless administration that is flagrantly violating existing United States laws and codes and regulations. And I understand the intent. It is aimed at making this federal administration being better and holding them to account. A very, very reputable goal. Unfortunately, I have little faith that Montgomery County will be able to force this administration to be their better angels and to adhere to existing United States law, especially regarding NEPA, which they have been ignoring across the country. The intent is very good. I don't think it will work. I can't support the amendment.
Is that it?
Yes.
Okay. I don't want to talk over you or anything. Yeah. Thank you. Councilmember Balcom.
Thank you. So I support this bill regardless, right? It's so important to move forward. But I do think the amendment makes it stronger. So from the perspective of this, we can only prohibit privately owned detention centers, and the bill as introduced does that by restricts by permitting. And so if they don't go through the NEPA process, which they haven't, then they won't get the permit. So I think that this strengthens the bill. At the same time, I think this gets to the strengthening the bill and gives us a tool to argue in court, right? So, and if they don't jump through these hoops, they don't get a permit. So without the amendment, they don't get a permit. With the amendment, they don't get a permit unless they jump through the hoops, which we don't think they're going to do. So I support the amendment.
Councilmember Lori Sells.
Thank you. I supported this bill as soon as Councilmember Glass introduced it. I watched what was happening across our state. I was at the NACO conference, actually, when this happened, and I was sitting with Senator Van Hollen, and he said, well, what are you all doing in Montgomery County? And I said, well, Councilmember Glass is actually introducing legislation. And I originally thought, we did not have the ability to limit a permit to a private entity. And he said, oh, no, you have the authority to do so. And so when someone wants to come to our community and disrupt how we, do business and how we, model the values that are unique to our county regarding immigration, inclusiveness, and diversity and inclusion and equity, it's important that we put all the safeguards and roadblocks possible in place. The reason why I, wanted to have this conversation and wanted to, move the amendment was the fact that they are looking at this at the state level. And I know that our Attorney General would not be looking at this provision if it wouldn't be helpful in the event that, we are faced with a lawsuit. And so I don't know if Ms. Nadeau wanted to comment on the provision and applicability, strengthening of this law with this amendment.
So what I will do actually is I realized that the amendment wasn't in the staff report, so I would like to read it into the record if it sounds like the committee is going to adopt it. Because then I can explain how DPS's piece would work. So the bill as introduced said the department must not issue a building permit or a use and occupancy permit for a privately owned immigration detention facility. This amendment would add the clause, unless the applicant submits documentation demonstrating compliance with the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA, and the Administrative Procedure Act, APA, as amended. A quick edit here to add the word federal before the APA, since there are different APAs. And so what the amendment would do is the applicant would have to, the intent was not for DPS to have to go through all of the NEPA and APA steps and dig into that level of law. So the way the amendment would work is the applicant would submit documentation sufficient to show DPS that they went through those steps and got those approvals. In more broad strokes, NEPA basically requires environmental assessments, which factors in health and safety. That's kind of the bulk of the Attorney General suit. And then the APA requires reasoned decision making as well. So that's where those two federal laws impact immigration centers.
Thank you. And Mr. Savakan, can you tell me if we have ever had any businesses have to meet those standards, or have you had any businesses submit paperwork complying with those standards?
I can't state for Montgomery County if that has been in place. Having worked in the district, that was a common requirement to have kind of impact studies prior to
Any
reviewing.
occupancy.
You mentioned issuing the permit. We wouldn't even accept, the permit would not even be accepted without those, proof of those documents, so
Okay.
much less issued. But in the county, I've no recollection of us having done that. But to me, it would be a straightforward implementation. You know, we would train our staff and put the checklists in place, and it would be pretty clear.
Okay. Okay. I'm just wondering what the ease of receiving that sort of, approval. We have our own impact statements, the RESJ, we have our environmental, and so I'm not familiar with the process that one would have to go through to get those approvals at the federal level. Like, is it something they have to?
Yeah, well, I think it was mentioned earlier, typically for new construction, they're aware of that process because that's a typical prerequisite for permits. We would have to make sure applicants are aware. Many, some may not be aware of that, but we would certainly make sure on our end that everyone's fully aware of the requirements and have that that SOP in place if and when an application does come in. It's pretty clear what the requirements are for us to even accept that application.
Okay.
For review.
Thank you.
Those were excellent questions from Councilmember Lorian Sales. I see Councilmember Don Lukey.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify a few things because the state's issue or the issue that the Attorney General is handling now is exactly based on the process that Councilmember Sales' questions were about, which is to say there isn't a state law or proposal about that the AG is defending related to outright ban of these facilities. Because again, as I mentioned, that is already decided law. It's not something that requires additional, there have been even recent cases on exactly this point, both in the Ninth Circuit and in the Third Circuit, and then that relate specifically to detention facilities and privately run detention facilities for immigration enforcement. But there have also been cases in the Fourth Circuit about when a state or a local jurisdiction tries to impose an extra requirement on an exclusively federal function, and time again they apply the same test. So it doesn't really matter what the thing is that you're trying to preclude or enhance with additional requirements. So here, what I'm trying to do with the amendment is recognizing that the bill as drafted doesn't actually, if we go to court, give us anything. That'll be a really short hearing on an injunction because it's just, you can't prohibit it. It isn't constitutional. You can't do anything. So what can we do, which is to give DPS the tools with which to say, I am not giving you this permit unless, and we already know that they don't comply with things. So we know we can't say, I can't do it ever. We do know we want to have transparency in who is applying, what it is for, and all the T's crossed and I's dotted. And it will delay or make it harder for them to do something, and certainly not do it quickly, because there's nothing about compliance with NEPA or the APA that is swift, right? And that has also been a hallmark of what this administration has tried to do, move with great speed, steamroll over everything. So give you a tool to say, stop, halt, get your injunction, right? Like what happened up in Hagerstown. And the AG has been successful so far in getting those injunctions in place. But they're not saying you can't ever have it. They're saying you can't have it now. You didn't do the right things. And also, and particularly with that site, there are environmental reasons why that may never come to be. But they're not trying to do it in a way that circumvents the 10th Amendment and the Intergovernmental Immunities Doctrine. And so that's all I'm asking, is that we do things the right way, we follow the Constitution, we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, and I give something useful that we can do as a jurisdiction to put a stop to these things and to make sure that we are doing right by our residents. That's all.
Thank you for that. And before I turn it to Councilmember Lorian Sales, I'm going to support this amendment to make it absolutely clear, because it does make our case stronger. And the fact that the federal government is violating the law with no, regard, they just do it, doesn't mean that the local government should just pass bills when they're not equipped them enough to prevent the federal government to do something. I think the amendment will make our case stronger because that's our duty, and I appreciate Councilmember Lukey for bringing it forward. With that, Councilmember Lori Sells.
Thank you. I appreciate, my colleagues' amendment, and I made this clear at the press conference. Whether we get sued or not, we're going to do everything we can to protect our residents. And so I don't believe that this law, this amendment, does anything but provide a potential path to have an ICE facility here. So with that being said, I cannot support the amendment, but I appreciate the introduction and I wanted to have the conversation. Thank you.
Okay. I think, does anybody else want to say anything else? No? We're good. Okay, so all those in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. So 2. Those against? 2. So we're tied, which means that we're going to bring it back in full council. Does anybody else have any questions regarding the bill as written? No? With that, can I get a motion to approve Bill 13-26E? Moved by Councilmember Glass, second by Councilmember Lori Sells. All those in favor, please raise your hand. It's unanimous. The bill passes and it moves forward to full council pretty soon. Okay, I'll let you know the date, but very soon. Thank you for coming. So now we're gonna move on to our agenda for the budget. So give me 1 second. I lost my window right here. And we're gonna start with the item number 2, which is alcohol and beverages services. If our friends from alcohol and beverages can move forward, that'd be great. And I see Mr. Mia, if you want to kick us off, appreciate you.
Sure. Good morning. Today we have the FY 27 operating budget for ABS, as well as 3 CIP projects for ABS as well. And regarding the operating budget, the executive is recommending a 5.1% increase from the FY 26 approved operating budget, about a little under $4 million. That is primarily same services cost increases related to contracts, compensation adjustments. There is a reduction of FTEs stemming from attrition of workforce. On the revenue side of the liquor fund, the story there is not so great, as has been trending the last couple of years. Alcohol projected revenues from alcohol sales, which comprise 98% of the liquor fund's revenues, are going down, are expected to go down by 5.8%. And this again has been a trend we've seen since the height of COVID, when their sales had reached a peak. All of this, as you can imagine, the increase in expenditures, the reduction in revenues is squeezing the general fund transfer for FY27, which is now projected to be $9.3 million, which is a $5.3 million decrease from this current year. And that, again, is a sharp decline from the COVID years when we had almost $30 million of earnings transfers. So we're rapidly approaching, if not already there, an inflection point where I think the department will have to come back perhaps in the fall and give us a plan on how to address the rising expenditures, which are being pushed from compensation adjustments and the squeezing of revenues downwards, which reflects national trends of alcohol sales essentially being flat or declining. So that's the high-level picture from my end. I'll stop there.
A reminder that we shouldn't be in the alcohol business, but hey, that's just me. Can the team, Director Durbin, share your presentation or any remarks?
Well, good morning, and thank you for having us. As County Council President Anani Gonzalez, it's nice to see you, and the committee as well. So our budget does reflect what's happening nationally with alcohol. We have an older generation that's drinking less, and a younger generation that's making different choices. They're drinking, they're just drinking differently. So you're not seeing the brand loyalty you saw perhaps when we were growing up. And I think COVID made a big impact on this generation as well. So we're working and collaborating with lots of folks around the community to try to help build sociability, get people out celebrating, doing, having those special events and things that weren't occurring during COVID that are just starting to pick up again. So the industry isn't going away, but it is resetting and readjusting. It became really big during COVID. So it was a huge industry. And so you're seeing more and more consolidation and different industries, different companies buying each other. It's pretty interesting to watch as it's happening pretty quickly. In the meantime, people in the community are looking at their economics issues and some of the decisions they have to make because of the economy. There's fears of tariffs. There's all kinds of things that are happening. And then there's low and no alcohol options that are becoming more and more popular. So we have met those some of those options. We the ready to serve or ready to drink products are the only product in the industry that's really growing right now. So we started a program last year allowing the beer and wine stores to receive permits. We have over 200 beer and wine stores that now sell ready to drink low ABV spirit-based products, which has helped them and also helped us. Our stores more and more are being used for by the businesses as warehouses. When they can't afford to buy a case of something, of product, they can just pick it off the shelf and pay the same price they would the wholesale prices. So in some of our stores, 20% of the sales are locals. And that's what we want to see. We want to do what we can to help the businesses stay in business. And our local program and local manufacturers are something that we've really taken and embraced, and we can put products on the shelves where other people can't. So some of the programs that we are doing are growing internally, locally, and that's the increments. We're not going to see big numbers. We're going to see smaller numbers. So we'll see if we can raise $1 million here and $1 million there. It's not going to be like it was back in the day, even 5 years ago. And having no and low alcohol products available to the community, healthier products, things that people want to make these different choices with. But people do want to go out, and you're seeing a little bit of a turn here. Wine is the biggest product that's hurting the category. There's grapes that have been left on the vines in California and everywhere. I think there was a lot of liquor and spirits and juice that was put into barrels during COVID, and now they're ready to drink, and people aren't drinking them like they were. So the industry really is having to reset. So we are going to continue collaborating and hopefully build on that, and we are doing all we can to kind of curb some of the spending, of course, and look at our teams and making sure we're right-sized and in the right place, and continue to help support the community. So.
Thank you for that. Does anybody have any questions? Do you know?
Yeah.
You do? Councilmember Lorenzo.
So I know that we've noticed a decrease in consumption of alcohol and non-alcoholic beverages. Are we ordering those more or having any events? I know we have lots of tastings in some of the different new facilities. So can you tell me more about how we're trying to be proactive in that space with how we're ordering and promoting?
Sure, thank you for that. Yes, we are. Beer, non-alcoholic beer is what's really I think it's growing faster than any other products because it's very difficult to make beer or wine non-alcoholic. The wine hasn't gotten there. I think there's a couple products in our stores that have sold, but the spirits, you're going to see like a non-alcoholic tequila that tastes like tequila, but costs as much as a bottle of tequila. So that's been a tough sell for people. But I do think the mocktails, and you can make something. It's kind of brought back the whole generation of drink making and the bartenders being able to be creative. So you do see these wonderful products especially on premise on the restaurants side. And then the RTDs, ready to drinks, which are lower ABV, so lower alcohol by volume. They're actually selling now, which I never thought I'd see, but they're selling in restaurants as well. So people know exactly what they're drinking. They know what the percentage is. And so there's lots of ways that's being influenced.
Okay, and do you have any refreshes coming up?
For the stores?
For the stores.
So what we did with the stores, and we spoke about it a little bit last year when we knew that this was happening. The model was a full remodel at one point of these stores. And then last year we started doing just refreshes because we knew we knew the feeling that people really enjoyed and the customer experience. And now they're called refresh lights if we do anything at all. So for the most part, everything's on hold this year. But we want to keep showing the public that we're growing and we want a safe space for people. So we're doing all we can internally just to kind of, keep those stores updated as much as possible.
Oh, good. I love the refreshes, and I'm just, I hope that's helping with, people coming into the store and their experience while in ABS. And I did want to ask about the ABS in consulting with the RESJ. I noticed that you mentioned that you are in consultation with RESJ to reassess your goals and objectives over the next year. Can you tell us a little bit more about where you're at and how the conversations are going?
Yes. Well, the conversations are always going because we reflect our community. So the products that we sell and serve reflect our community and what people are asking for, especially the diverse products. You're going to find them in our stores and not in other places. In most cases, we do our best to get them in. And then we also celebrate locals and the local manufacturers. We have been speaking, we're a little different than the other departments. I know everybody probably says that, but we really are different. And so we don't have clients, we have customers, and our customers are our community, and our customers are our license holders. And sometimes the license holder isn't even there on a day-to-day basis. So it could be somebody from a national group or people that just aren't part of our community. So we really need to engage with those businesses one-on-one as much as possible. We have a core group, racial equity group. We finally have a new manager of HR coming in that's going to help us lead. But it is difficult for us to get, we have to work in segments and to make it go together because we have people driving trucks and people that are in stores and they're not on site, 500 people. We started it's almost a breakfast club we have quarterly, and we bring speakers in to talk about trainings and help educate our team. So we'll continue to work with racial equity and social justice team to do whatever we can to really, everything we look through is through an equity lens. So we want to do a better job of showing that.
Thank you.
Before I turn it to Councilmember Balcom, can you specify what's your return on investment for these refreshers that you talked about before and after they were refreshed in terms of sales?
So when I guess I should speak on that first.
Sure. My name is Scott McClure. I'm the ABS budget analyst. Yes, as far as the stores that have been refreshed, we've had 6 stores that have been refreshed to date. The first 2, we've seen for Montrose, sales have returned to pre-COVID levels. And then for the other store, Cabin John, they've exceeded pre-COVID levels. So we've seen those 2 stores, we've seen a positive return on those. And then we've had The other 4 stores that we've refreshed, the Gaithersburg store is a brand new store. So prior to 22, it wasn't around. So revenues are increasing on that store as people find it and start going there. And then our other 3 refreshes, they've 2 of them were just finished last year, so we really haven't had it. They haven't been reopened long enough for us to have sales to analyze those trends. And then one just opened first quarter this year, so those really haven't been reopened long enough. And then we've got 2 that are undergoing for currently this year, so a total of 8. But yes, for those earliest stores that we did refresh, we are seeing positive returns on those.
Thank you for that. Councilmember Balcom.
Thank you. Just to follow on the refreshes, I think the ROI is important, but I think it's also important to make sure that you're giving the community a store that meets our standards, right? So I appreciate that the refreshes are on hold for now, but there are some stores that need them. And so I think that we need to look hard at those for next year, perhaps. But we just, from an equity perspective, we can't let these stores fall below a standard that we have in other stores, right? So I think that that's an important discussion to have. Maybe not this year, but we need to continue to refresh stores. Private sector does it, and we need to do it too. So that was one issue. And then, unless you have a response to
No,
that.
I was just going to agree with you. Return on community is just as important for us. So we totally agree.
Great, thank you. And then I just have a couple questions about, so liquor licenses have gone up 43%. Is that a matter of the cost of the license or the number of licensees?
Yes, that the liquor license revenue, actually, in recent years, the totals have been up, like I said, in the over $1.7 million. For FY26, we've had some turnover. That number didn't get updated, so that's a little stale. So for FY27, that number is adjusted up to what we've seen in recent years.
Okay.
1.7 range.
And how does that mesh with the decrease in sales? Is it just lower sales per licensee? Is that?
I can add to it. So that, yes, it's all reflected in those numbers. So, and also people are changing the types of license they have. So they might be doing something differently. And like we know some businesses are trying to do more events later at night. So they might get the license that allows them to do that and not have to have full dinners, those types of things. So people are adjusting to, where they are right now. You see the hospitality industry. So it's definitely reflecting that. And then those RTDs that I talked about are for especially the Class D beer and wine that are on and off premise. So you can come in and have a pizza and you can do whatever. Those RTDs are really selling well in those businesses. So it's kind of ebbing and flowing there. Instead of beer, that's what they're drinking. But at least we have another product that they like and that we can sell. So.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Glass.
My colleagues asked about the areas I'm interested in, so I'm going to drill down a little bit more on those 2 previous questions. One, the liquor fund, the 43.7% increase. As you just noted, that is because of increased activity and changing in the licenses. Is that reflective of any increases in the fees as well?
No, sir.
Good answer. Okay. At first blush, when I read the packet and saw a 43.7% increase, I thought it was because of change of the fees, which would not have been good. But your response is good, so I appreciate that. And then back to the refreshers. When we use the term refresher, is that the rebranding to Oak and Barrel?
It is. It's that same feel and look of Oak and Barrel, but it's a little softer.
A little different, yeah. Okay, very good. And then the only other question I have there is seeing on page 6 of the staff packet, the budgets for each of the stores. I'm curious in knowing the store performances. What are the best performing stores in the county?
Actually, I believe in the packet, Naeem has
Yes.
he has a table
Okay.
there that outlines it.
What page is that on?
Last page 17 shows the FY26 performance through December last year, so half a year's worth of data. So I believe
That's a chart, yes.
yes.
Okay, page 17. So
as of
so break this down for us on live TV.
Anybody?
As far as revenues, I know Montrose and Hampton Lane, those are, their sales revenues are near the top.
So Montrose is number 1, Kensington's number 2, and Seneca Meadows is number 3? All wonderful neighborhoods. Okay. Very good. Thank you for that. Appreciate you pointing to this very detailed chart. I will take more time to look at that later, but thank you for the presentation.
No. With that, thank you for the presentation. Without objection, we'll accept the recommendations from the county executive.
We do have 3 CIP projects. I can go through them.
Yes,
but they're
please
detailed.
do.
Yep,
Please
okay.
do.
The first one is the ABS conveyor system upgrade CIP project. That has a cost increase in FY27 of 1.7 million, primarily due to higher than anticipated bids coming back for that upgrade. It's been a project underway already. The funding is long-term financing, so it's debt finance, and that does have a debt service cost impact on the liquor fund, but it's overall it's 1.7 million increase. So no issues there from staff's perspective. Second was the ABS delivery trucks. The department is purchasing 3 trucks in FY27 to replace current 18-year-old trucks that are essentially at the end of, beyond the end of their useful life. Again, that's financed through debt, short-term financing. So the total cost increase in 27 in CIP is 585,000. No issues there. And finally, as Director Durbin talked about, the ABS retail store refresh funding has been reduced in FY27 by 1.2 million to give a time to kind of pause and assess going forward. But the remaining out years funding is still in place, and that is a combination of both liquor fund dollars as well as contributions from landlords contributing toward the improvement. So again, good idea, no issues there from staff's perspective.
Any questions? Oh, Councilmember Lawrence.
Thank you. Can you tell me more about this conveyor system upgrade? You said the price rose in the middle of construction? No?
Yes. As the project has been delayed, the costs have gone up. That's kind of basically what.
It's been delayed by.
I mean, as the project, I think earlier estimates that we received, they've gone up since then, just because we've pushed the project back a little bit.
Can you tell me more why we pushed the project back? Like we put an RFP out, someone responded. When did the work start? Why are there delays, or their work hasn't started at all?
The work is just starting now. We
Okay.
made our first payment, so we're going to be receiving materials.
Okay, so when was the contract executed?
It's just recently. When we signed the contract, we had to make it up January 26th.
Okay, so when did the price go up by 1.7 million? After the contract was signed? I'm just trying to understand where this increase came from. Yes, can you
Good morning.
introduce yourself for the record, please?
Yes, ma'am. I'm Kevin Hutchison, Division Chief of Wholesale Operations. So the 1.7 million that you're seeing and the increase of the cost, 2 years ago when we came here, we were actually trying to get the project done as a sole source, but then we had to go back out and put it out for bid. Once we put it out for bid, everything that came back in that time, there's been a rising increase of materials and also labor costs associated with the project.
Okay, so 2 years we've been waiting for the project.
That's correct.
Okay. All right, and what's the date of completion expected?
We're looking for a completion date of January of 2027.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Are there any other questions? With that, without objection, we approve the recommendations. Thank you so much for coming. We're going to move on to item number 3. That's the FY27 operating budget for Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation, NDA. I'm going to ask staff from NCEDC to come forward, as well as the county executives team. I see Mr. Ken Harman Espada here. And switching analyst now with Mr. Falab Ali. And whenever you're ready, you can please kick us off. Then I'm gonna turn it to the executives team and then MCDC, and after that, we're gonna open it up for questions.
That's good. Good morning. Happy budget. Yeah, this is item 3, Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation FY27 recommended budget. Have the whole team here. So for FY27, the county executive is recommending an increase of $470,451. That's comprised of an enhancement of $339,000 and the inflationary adjustment, which equals $131,000 this year. As you all know, MCEDC is the county's economic development organization. We recently redesignated them as such for the next 5 years. They work on business attraction, retention, and marketing. For their work plan specifically, they provided a very detailed and comprehensive review of the last year. That's provided in the circle pages. I've provided a summary in the packet as well. They supported over 2,500 jobs. They've started holding FAM tours and have worked on several local projects. And you can see a summary of that on page 2. On page 3, I've provided a summary of international travel and international business recruitment that they've been working on. Specifically, they've supported the county executives' trips in the amount of $72,000, where they've paid for travel, logistic, materials, and other needs. Although MCEDC staff hasn't traveled on these trips, they've also contributed support in the amount of 375 hours of staff time, which is also equal to approximately $19,000. Provided some information about that in the packet. There's also much more detailed information about the work that they have done and some of the accomplishments that they've noted from the county executive on the circle pages, specifically circle pages 6 and 9. They have budgeted the same amount this year in FY27 for international travel, which is $50,000. You may want to understand a little bit more about what their plan is this year. And it's also an opportunity to maybe consider later after the budget holding a deeper dive on this topic.
I'm gonna stop you right there. As you know, I requested this international travels work session, and I had decided to do it in the fall, just for 2 reasons. Number one, we're dealing with the budget, but the main reason is because we were waiting for the brand new executive director for MCDC. Now he's here. And I know they're working on their strategic plan, and the reason why I waited was to wait until they get their act together so we can come forward and have that presentation, which actually works out very well with the timings, since we're going to have a brand new county executive. I don't think the county should not be in the business of having a new county executive waking up one day and say, I'm going to go to this part of the world. It needs to be a decision that has meaning, that is very thought through. And that is what I expect from MCDC to come forward and present in the fall that I requested a while back. And I know you know, Mr. Smith, and I look forward to that. So let's pause on all that until that time comes forward. All right? Thank you. You may continue.
Thank you. Yes, so still on page 3, brief summary of the independent audit that was budgeted last year as well. It was $10,000. This is a revised packet. I had erroneously noted that it was $50,000. The independent audit is not complete yet. I think there's another thing to potentially review after the budget when it is complete. We did ask them to explain how they'll be able to focus on the direct impacts of MCEDC's work specifically, as opposed to sort of connecting it to the changes in the economy, and they've explained a little bit about how they'll do that, and you can expand on that further. And they provided another detailed response in the circle pages. Moving on to page 4, as an NDA, they don't receive an OBET analysis. And in terms of the recommended changes, turning to section E here, the main point of focus here is the enhancement. The county executive is described as expanded marketing advertising to support countywide economic development efforts. As you'll note in the description of this, and again, there's another detailed description in the circle pages, but The MCEDC sees this as more than just that description. I think it's really a part of their overall base budget. They've noted that in addition to expanding some of those initiatives, they would also hold additional events and add headcount. In terms of how that number was arrived, it wasn't based on an estimate of, expanded marketing or advertising costs, but rather you can see a little bit of the math that they did. But I think the county executive was targeting an overall budget of $6.2 million. I'm unsure why that number was chosen. And then they assumed that they would be using one-time reserves in the amount of $600,000, and then based on arriving at a total of $6.2 million, calculated $339,000, and then on top of that, apply the inflationary adjustment. So that's the source of the number. Unclear why the 6.2 million figure was shown, but wanted to see how that impacted their base budget. And so you can see that on page 5. We have a breakdown of all the revenues and operating expenses broken out. I think the biggest change is that they would use their one-time reserves and this year to really staff up. They've had some vacancies. There's been some lapse as well. So they do have some additional reserves for that reason. One thing I would note, though, on page 5 is that MCEDC had requested a budget that totaled $6.1 million, and the county executives ultimately offered an appropriation that is $131,000 and takes them to that $6.2 million figure. So council staff believes that at least there should be maybe a discussion about why there was an additional $131,000 added. And where that, what the impacts would be based on the budget. It seems like they would assume the same amount of personnel in either circumstance, whether they receive $5.7 million from the county or $5.6. And so the impact would really be on the operating expenses. Last year, they did have a strategic plan for $150,000, and that money is not being programmed to that use this year. So it's being redistributed across those program expenses. So there isn't actually a net decline. And so just thinking through that accounting and doing some of the budget nitpicking that we're doing as council staff, have recognized that perhaps that enhancement could be reduced by at least $131,000. We'll summarize the options in a minute, but going back to page 6 now, just talking a little bit about their use of the reserves because they are planning to use them. And notably, they've used reserves ever since the county approved a reduction in their budget for FY25. They've supplemented their spending with some reserves. Like I said, I think that's generated mostly through lapse, so vacant positions that were held. The committee may wish to confirm, because they're using some one-time reserves and they are staffing up, if they don't receive an additional appropriation next year, it's possible that they would have to reduce their expenses. It seems like that would be most likely at the programmatic expenses as opposed to pulling back staff. But I think the committee may want some certainty or confirmation that the same level of service, the same outcomes are still achievable at the same base budget next year when they won't have reserves in the event that there is an additional appropriation in FY28. So I think that's an outstanding question about the sustainability of their budget. And if that's not the case, maybe there's some guidance the council may want to give MCEDC about how to approach their budget for FY27 and beyond. So just to summarize, you can see a summary of options on page 7. The first option is just to place the enhancement on the reconciliation list. It would go there anyway. And council staff can note that it could possibly be reduced. The council, or the committee rather, could just reduce the enhancement altogether by that amount to $207,000, and that would go on the reconciliation list. The committee could also just vote against approving this enhancement altogether. That's pretty much the summary of this packet, and happy to answer any questions and turn it over.
Let's turn it over to the county executives team.
Good morning, Council President Fanny Gonzalez and members of the ECON committee. I would just want to start by saying that thank you for the last several years of partnership with the committee, for engaging with MCEDC, working with the board, the staff, and the new CEO to refocus and strengthen our efforts in economic development. And this is one component of our approach to economic development in Montgomery County. Later this month, we'll talk about the business center and the work they do in their area. in the development of the FY27 budget, we really focused on some objectives that CEO Smith wanted to do with the organization, including strengthening the organization's capacity, bringing in the right talent and structure, focusing on site selection, focusing on workforce talent and development, focusing on priority sites and how they're marketing, and engaging in a much more integrated marketing. I hope I'm not stealing your talking points. But in developing this budget, the C fully supported the request of MCEDC. We did engage with them on the discussion of reserves. As you know, the county is the only funder of MCEDC. So the size of their reserves was a concern of ours. We reached an agreement of how much they could use the reserves to fund needs, and we'll continue to have that discussion, I'm sure, in years to come. The budget had two components. One, the request from MCDC, and as you know, with all of our other partners, we have put in the budget a 2.5% inflationary adjustment. When WorkSource Montgomery comes up, that I'm sure that will be in your discussion as well as other organizations. And I know the council intends to deal with that later, but those are the two pieces. So we just want to make sure we clarify that. On international, I agree with you. We all agree with you that a strategic MCDC-led effort is best. It does take time to develop these relationships. I don't know if you know the announcement from Galaverse to come to Montgomery County took years. I believe you, Council President Fanny Gonzalez, were at the first meeting with them. And I know Councilmember Vice President Balcom was at the last
Let's not
meeting.
Confuse my request of having a strategic international plan with the trips that have happened that I'm grateful. I mean, 3 of the 4 people here have joined the county executive on those trips, and they have been good, and we have gotten things out of it. But don't take my request for a strategic plan that should be led by MCDC and know whoever is the county executive that decides and says, we're going to go here.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be that way.
As I said,
That was my point.
And as I said, completely agree with the strategic MCDC-led effort. With that, we're here to answer questions. I'm not the star of your show, but we're here to support this guy and his team.
Diplomat. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Smith.
Good morning. Jared Smith, President and CEO of MCEDC. So I've got a few comments, and I have some slides for you, and then happy to answer your questions. Let me lead, again, as I always do, with gratitude, Council President. You are in my face with your vision for economic development, and I'm here for it. Thank you so much. Councilmember Balcom sits on our board and has been a mentor in helping me on board not only to the business community here, but to government and what that has meant. Councilmember Glass has taken time, more than 2 or 3 times out of his day, to spend time talking about his vision for the future. And Councilmember Sales has come to our events and as just somebody who's been a big supporter of a new MCEDC, and I'd want to pause and just say thank you for that. I appreciate that. Last year was pivotal for MCEDC as our board thought through bringing me here and establishing a new vision. I'm here to tell you that FY27 is pivotal for all of us. We need to have a really high stakes conversation right now about the economic realities, the state of the economy here in Montgomery County, the county and MCD's plan and investment in those economic realities, and about hope for our residents and the opportunities for our residents. I don't envy you and the crucial prioritization that's on your plate right now. I understand. And I'm I'm going to try to make this request as easy as I can. Economic development is a revenue generator for this county. Let me say that one more time. Investing in us equals revenue for this county. Every job that we assist in creating means food and shelter for our families. It means career pathways for workers. It means economic mobility for all workers. It means new tax revenue to support infrastructure and support services. And it means that hope that I'm talking about. So our partnership together is literally the front lines of addressing growth, affordability, and a sustainable economy for everyone. So let me walk you through a few things for MCEDC. Thank you, Bilal. We can go to the next slide. I don't want you to see these small type numbers here and pass over the importance. Total jobs attracted, expanded, and retained. Our organization and the businesses that we partnered with are 80% over the goal for what we set out to do, and we're not even done with this fiscal year. That is impressive, especially understanding the transition that our organization has undergone. And I cannot thank our team enough for diving in so deep for that. I also want to point out here on this slide, our capital investment, the goal was $200 million. We are currently at $1 billion in investment for these companies that are investing in Montgomery County. And that is amazing. Thank you. Our current priorities, building out our leadership team. You've seen that we had announced a new chief operating officer. We are in the final stages of hiring a vice president of business development, and I have a verbal acceptance, so more to come on that. And we're ready to launch a search for our new head of research, which is going to be very important. We have spent time connecting with local partners in a new way. And you mentioned it already. We are in the middle of the strategic planning process. I estimate we're about 35% complete with that right now. And we are going to be addressing economic diversification, creating economies of scale in these marketing efforts and business development efforts, branding this county and our organization and our target industries. And what does that mean in addressing those challenges and opportunities? One thing I want to point out for sure is we have focused on some priority sites that in the county that we have been actively marketing to site selectors, to companies, and we're doing that through redoing things on our website and buying sponsored content on social media to reach those target audiences and bringing site selectors into Montgomery County to touch and feel and experience who we are so that when they are advising companies where to go, they have that firsthand knowledge. And again, we just wanted to highlight a few wins here, but I don't really want to get company specific. I want to hone in on a couple of things there. If you look at X Energy, it's not just about the brand and how great of a company they are. It's about 525 net new jobs paying $150,000. That is incredible. The engineering company here, great wages and jobs. If you look at the last example, though, you see 7 net full jobs, and you might say, wait, 7 jobs? Hey, look, first of all, we are here for every job, but 380 jobs were retained. And what I'm highlighting here is that we're not just fighting for new jobs, we're fighting for the ones that are here to retain those jobs because our competitors are going 100 miles an hour coming after our own companies. So that's an example of playing defense. We are working hard to bring people together, and I've cited a few examples here. You're going to see more events on topics that matter. So Councilmember Sales came to our capital perspectives and talking about access to capital for local companies, and we're going to continue to grow that in service to our businesses. Thank you. You should be asking me, Jared, what are we going to be focused on in 27? So I mentioned those events, bringing more knowledge, research, fueling decisions that are made with top-notch research and data. Obviously, the county plan is very important in guiding what we do. And you're right, Council President, about having a plan, not just for the the international work that we're doing, but for all of it, for everything. And that will 100% be included in that plan. We will not be making one-off decisions on what to do. There will be a plan, there will be a budget, and this council and the C's office will be involved in that with us and our board. When we think about business development and marketing, we put them together. I'm not going to go through every single thing here, but the budget that we have, this is shots on goal. That's what lead generation is. Shots on goal, if you understand the what I'm alluding to there in hockey. See, I'm from the West Coast and we just got hockey, so I'm learning here. We have to be in the face of more opportunity. If we want to bring opportunity, we have to go to it. And that's what this expanded budget will go towards, more shots on goal. Thank you all. I am so proud of what I'm about to show you, what I'm showing you right here. If you look at the county's investment in us in FY26, the total jobs that we've gotten, this is just so far. That number is going to go up before the end of this fiscal year. In total jobs and CapEx, we estimate for every $1 that is allocated to MCDC from the county, you're getting $11.48 back. So I told you we're a revenue generator, and I believe that number. How many of your dollars would you invest in something if you were getting an 1,100% return on it? The answer is all of your dollars. That is a great investment. And before we close out in a slide, I'm going to show you an even greater number, which is, if you see in the summary there, if you measure it in economic impact, it is $133 for every dollar. So that is the ripple effect throughout the community. There has never been a more important time than to continue your investment and your partnership in what we're doing. And I hope that we've shown you some of those reasons today. And my team and I are here to answer any of your questions.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Can you tell me what's your plan on ensuring that in the future you're going to have private money coming in to support your work? Because right now it's just government. You're like completely funded by us. And that wasn't the point when this was created. What's the plan? Because it's important.
No, thank you for that question. When I was going through the search process for this role for me, that was one of my first questions, which is, hey, I'm looking at the budget and I see that we are 100% government funded. Well, we do have a few more dollars that we generate through some of our efforts in managing ACE loans and different things but it's a very, very small percentage. So I have started that conversation with our board of directors and more to come. I'm very new, Council President.
I know, I'm trying not to give you a hard time, but it's really frustrating because we expect more. And we expect the private sector to chip in because at the end of the day, we are all helping each other. It cannot just be the government. Otherwise, we could have done this ourselves, right? And so I know you understand, but we're going to give you more time. I'm just saying that you need to hear from me. So I'm going to start with Council Vice President Balcom.
Okay, so I have a few questions, but I do need to jump on the private sector bit. So I think that that's a much bigger discussion that we all have to have in looking at it from the strategic planning perspective and what the realistic expectation is in this culture. So I want to have patience, and we need a lot of brain power on what that expectation will be, and hopefully that'll come through on the strategic plan. So I think that, I appreciate the budget, and I just wanted to look at, a lot of what we're talking about on the reconciliation list, we have an extremely difficult budget, and I know that you know that, and what we're facing right now is meeting the budget and with a 6.3% tax increase, or cutting the budget and trying to avoid a tax increase. And from an economic development perspective, it's really it's a difficult situation because I don't want a tax increase from an economic development perspective, but then when we're just excruciatingly looking at every single line item, we have to put everything in the pot. So this goes on the reconciliation list just because that's the decision that we've made, that any increase goes on the reconciliation list. That said, I think that from the perspective as we're always looking at the difference between additional resources and maintaining the same level service. And I think for economic development, the whole point is that we're not maintaining same level services. We need to increase the level of service. We need to increase our investment in economic development. And so I'm assuming this decision today will result in the reconciliation list. I will make this plea to the full council that, and I think, Mr. Smith, you mentioned this at the very beginning of your remarks. This is an investment in the future of Montgomery County. And during the budget, we had our budget briefing the other day. Many of my colleagues mentioned the fact that we need to increase our economic development, and we can't do that without that investment. So I just wanted to mention the issue of I'm not looking for same level service. I'm looking for more. So that perspective. The use of reserves for ongoing expenses is difficult, and we're dealing with that on a much grander scale for the entire county budget. But that does cause pause, and Mr. Ali spoke to that in the perspective of let me just ask the question, can you differentiate in your budget one-time costs that we're not going to be, that you're not going to, if we don't fund this $500,000 next year because that reserve slot's going away, I think this is probably the last year that we're going to see this reserve money being used. What is this $500,000 going to that next year aren't going to lay off people? So if you can just talk about that a little bit.
Certainly. Two things. So first, let me say, when we ask for an increase in budget, I understand that our team, we have to do our part too. So it's not just about having more money to do things. It's about refining how we do what we do to even be better at our own jobs. So we want to meet in the middle. We're not just asking without giving. So I definitely want to make that point. I know how to budget, and one thing I'm not going to do is grow permanent expenses to a point where it's going to exceed what we can deliver. So there are things like marketing and certain business development activities that we can do. And we can scale up or we can scale back, and I can do that without hurting the way our team operates. But when I scale back, that's just fewer shots on goal. That's fewer jobs that we have the opportunity to land. So it's not. Don't think of it that it's necessarily holding us back. It's holding the county back from opportunity, and that's the way I would get. So you can think being out on the road in the face of companies and more trade shows and more branding and marketing opportunities, bringing more site selectors in or not.
Right. And I appreciate that. And you're preaching to the choir. However, next year, when we look at the increased budget, there's a $500,000 hole that we're going to have to address next year, because we all have been relying on using reserves for the past several years. So I just want to put that out there. And then I know we're not talking about international travel right now, but I do have to say that one of the things that I want to make sure that when we look at strategic planning, I agree with the council president 100% that our international travel should be part of the county's strategic plan, and we need to address that. And then I think there's a big, we're getting a new county executive next year. We know that. But there has to be a discussion about who owns those dollars, who has control over that funding. And I think that if the county executive uses, if we have a certain amount budgeted and the county executive uses more of that money, they need to make MCDC whole on that. And whether that's through a supplemental or I mean, that's the only way it can happen. But I think that historically there's been a very loose line about how much is being budgeted, how much is being spent, and who gets to control that money. So we don't need to discuss that today. But I think that when we look at the strategic plan, we need to figure out who has control of the money. So I don't know if you want to.
I was just going to add, I am supportive of international efforts. I think this county, this region in particular, is very interesting to companies from outside of the United States. I do not think we need to not have this, but the good news is what we're talking about here is procedural in nature. Like, how are we doing this? It's not whether or not we should. We know we should. And so processes are easy to tweak and work, and we're 100% committed to that.
Okay, great.
Yep.
And I have to say, having just come back, it was so beneficial, not only for the individuals there, but the relationship. And I really saw it's not just, it can't be just a one-off. You have to build relationships for a long time. And I saw that very clearly. The investment that we made was really showed. And I know Ms. Costello's in the audience, and she's been such a critical part of that. So I wanted to appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you for that. Councilmember Glass.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate the presentation and all of the conversation since you arrived, sir. Appreciate having gotten to know you, sharing my thoughts, hearing yours, and continuing to work with staff. And again, thank you to the board for all of for the holding of the fort and staff as well since you arrived earlier this year. It seems like a while. I know.
I didn't have this gray beard before.
I noticed. So just going back to the budget, what am I looking at? Right here, the $131,000 difference. I don't know if it was articulated, but if it was, can we re-up as to why the county executive introduced that on top of what the MCEDC request was?
Thank you, Councilmember Glass. The county executive introduced that as the across-the-board 2.5% inflationary adjustment for our external partners.
Very good. And so my question, Mr. Smith, then within the organization's budget, there was a lapse period of time before you came on board. Were there any natural savings there, trying to figure out the balancing of the books, that either this fund does not have to go in this year because there were natural savings without the CEO or any other staff member?
We did have some salary savings because we had some open positions. However, we have spent that down. So there's been this delicate balance of not having too much money in our reserve fund because we don't want to take taxpayer dollars and have them on the sidelines. And so the county executive's office has been working with me to understand, and I needed to understand kind of how we got there. However, we are staffing back up. We have paid a lot of expenses that we can up front, and we are spending our reserve fund down back to the level where it should be with very good budgeting.
Okay.
Yep.
So I very mindful of how to ask the question, but while the organization did not request this, how would you feel about receiving it?
If I'm being completely honest with you, I'm thrilled for every dollar that we get. I would love to be sitting here championing another $2 million. So I'm happy for these dollars. We know exactly where we would spend that money in business development opportunities and marketing to generate more opportunities for our residents. So I know where we're going to spend it, and I'd love to have a future conversation about how this number is even larger.
Very good. Noted in future budgets, for sure, we'll have those conversations. I do want to go back to the question and comments that colleagues have made about the international travel.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second before
Yes.
you go there?
Yeah.
Just, I think we need clarity here. If we go back to page 1, and I'm going to ask Bilal to please talk about the 2.5% inflationary adjustment in 131, because it's for that. Can you?
Yeah, just to clarify the numbers, it's sort of funny how the algebra works out because they're applying the inflationary adjustment on last year's appropriation, which is the practice across anyone that receives one. But the way the enhancement was totaled is just based on arriving at 6.2, and then it happens to be on top of the 6.2 that OMB or the CE was targeting. So if you kind of were to rearrange it, maybe like if we were to show a formula that had the inflationary adjustment, like you'd see how it's extra, but I do think it's sort of extra in that like they requested a certain amount that should have assumed for inflation. And I guess when you break it out on the base budget, we know that there was a savings of $150,000 anyway. So like presumably the estimate for FY27 for programmatic expenses would account for inflation. I think maybe that's the question to clarify, is that if you look at that third column, when they say $565,000 for business development, is that accounting for the inflationary impact there? Because that's what they requested. And like I said, there is that savings from last year. So yes, I do acknowledge that it's reducing it by the inflationary adjustment, but I think programmatically it's sort of a wash.
So, Mr. Smith, the question then is the budget that you introduced and that the county executive accepted, did that already include inflationary adjustments?
Yes.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
let me explain the reason why I have to look at staff is the original budget request was submitted before I came on
Understood.
with MCDC.
Understood.
Yeah.
All things here are true. I understand that. That's right. And our job is to sort through all of that. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that clarifying question and the question assist. Very good. I do want to go back to the international travel. I know and appreciate the council, the committee chair for wanting to schedule a conversation later in the fall, but given this is in front of us right now, what is the rationale for no MCEDC staff accompanying the county executive on these trips?
That is not the rationale. I was actually set to go to the India portion, but with everything that's happening in the Middle East, I chose not to go. So we absolutely have the invitation to be a part of that, and the council executive and his staff involved me in the planning of that. Our staff was involved in the planning of that. Again, this was only my personal decision to not go.
I appreciate that. So that was India. What about Japan, China, Spain, and Taiwan?
Before I got here. I'm sorry, I can't give you perspective, but to my knowledge, we've never been uninvited from those.
That's correct. And this is one of those gaps that occurred that what the administration felt very strongly we needed to have an international play. I know we'll talk about this in the fall. It's something that for every trip we do partner, and MCDC is there to support us. And I know in past trips, the previous CEO had gone on at least one I'm aware of, but they are supportive. They work with us to plan. They work with us to follow up on leads, and But there's never been a wall saying no MCDC on this trip. There's just been an unavailability, I suppose, for some trips to have them with us.
Sure, I didn't expect there to be a wall, but at the very least, there needs to be partnership and cooperation, and clearly nearly $20,000 of staff time is devoted to this work.
Yes, Prayas Nipani, Director of Economic Development, MCDC. So, Councilmember Glass, we work with the county executive team pretty closely on all the international travel, from sourcing leads at the initial stage, but also with follow-up towards the end. And when we are able to, we have attended the trips with the county executive. When Bill Tompkins was here, he had gone on multiple trips with the county executive team. And Lynn Stein-Benjayan, when she was here, she has also attended multiple international trips as well. The ones we haven't been able to attend is because of scheduling conflicts, but also the leadership transition that happened. But having said that, we have been deeply involved in conversation with the county executive teams on all of the international trips.
And I did attend one of those trips, and the former CEO was on that trip, but in a much more supportive role, if that's how I could say it. It was the executive team that primarily took the lead there. Are there any trips planned for the remaining for the first 6 months of this upcoming fiscal year?
I can answer from MCDC right now. So as we develop our 4-year county strategy, I'm also developing the MCEDC strategy that will go as a part of that. So we will pull our deliverables. International business development efforts are going to be a part of that. And so while we have not scheduled anything right now from our staff and our organization, I'm not sure what where the CE is thinking for the fall, but I don't have like a list of places to give you today, Councilman. And I'll tell you, I'm glad that I don't, because to the Council President's point, there needs to be a very well thought out strategy for us to do that.
I agree. Mr. Hartman, are there any trips planned for the first 6 months of this fiscal year?
Council Member Glass, there are no trips currently planned. As with our previous trips, there are opportunities to follow up and build relationships. If there is an opportunity that presents itself, that might be in the cards, but nothing currently is planned.
So, Madam Chair, I appreciate the planning for this conversation and the devotion to time in the fall for a deeper dive, and I would like to make a motion that there be no international travel plans, funds used for the first 6 months, as there is going to be a change here in county government, and there's going to be a much deeper dive on the intentionality, to Mr. Smith's very accurate point, that we need to have better coordination, better forethought, and a better vision for what these trips should be.
You cannot, and I 100% second that. I cannot second on the chair here, but I will say, okay, second by Vice President Balcom, there cannot be any money allocated for any trips for the rest of this year, or any staff support for any trip. It cannot happen. I want to make sure that that's clear with you guys, because we're not going to support that.
We will not execute anything without a strategy and buy-in on any trip like that. So I just want to be clear. We're talking about international. You're not talking about domestic. Okay.
International trips mandated by the county executive. Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Just a quick question on that, Council President. That does not include any trade shows that we might have already planned to attend as a part of business development efforts.
That's different. I'm talking about county executive trips.
That's clear. Thank you.
Yeah. I think we should vote on this. Councilmember Lorian Sells.
Thank you. I know that the strategic plan is underway. Have we seen the scope of the plan, and does it include international travel strategy? Is that going to be part of the strategic plan?
There will be a nod to it, but the 4-year county strategy is going to be very large and very broad. Okay. I think what we're talking about here is MCEDC's annual action plan to take action on what we're supposed to out of the 4-year county plan. So I would say you would get more that specificity that you're looking for inside of our internal organizational plan, not necessarily in a 4-year county strategy. So the county strategy could say, and the answer to your question is no, we don't have the actual who's going to do what yet, because we're only in the first 35% of the plan.
Yeah.
But the specificity that you're looking for would come through our own internal action plan.
Only because, I mean, this is what the Economic Development Corporation has done. I mean, you've done international travel in the past, so I'm just surprised that that's not going to be a component of the long-term strategic plan that's going to guide the work of this entity for years to come, not just for a fiscal year.
And Councilmember, for clarity there, it may be. So when we start talking about selling Montgomery County and how we
Yes.
market it, there could be an item in there that says attracting international companies should be a major a pillar of what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And then it would be on our own internal plan to figure out how. And that's what I mean by that specificity.
But we're paying someone to strategize and make recommendations and meet with us and meet with, you know, the board of directors to understand how to guide the work strategically on a high level for years to come. So I would think that if that's a goal of ours, because that's what we've been spending, you know, funds on to travel internationally and attract businesses, that would be a pretty big component of the plan. And so now I haven't seen the scope of this plan. I'm looking forward to seeing the strategic plan, but now I'm curious of what is this company doing? What are they researching?
Yeah,
exactly?
So they're researching, they're doing a SWOT on our community. So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. They're also going to be looking at target industries. Are we aiming our economic development efforts correctly? They're going to be addressing those threats and opportunities and giving us suggestions on how we do that. But what I mean is, back to the international point for a moment,
Yes.
tactically, how do we reach out to companies in whatever
that's
country
going to
we
be
feel
internally,
that,
but they should
that's
be
what I
able
mean.
to
Yeah.
guide, you know, what they've seen other people do and how they've been able to attract other businesses so that you can define the plan day to day internally. So can we see a copy of that scope that was given to this company and what they're being guided to do?
I can send you what we have.
Okay. And then I had another question. I know we spoke briefly about this, the OBET tool, our operating budget equity tool analysis. Is there a reason why that was not done for this department?
Councilmember, I think that only applies to county government departments. So we just haven't been doing that for any NDAs, and that's the same over the past 2 fiscal years that I've been working on the budget as well. So it's just a quirk.
Okay. That's interesting. Okay. I mean, I'm not comfortable with that. I mean, it's part of our, you know, legislation, RESJ, and so we're giving money to an entity that we expect to comply with our RESJ, you know, laws and regulations. So I want to hear from the county executive staff about why we are excluding NDAs from complying or adhering to RESJ laws as they're doing their budget.
Councilmember Sales, I honestly don't know the answer to that question. I will regroup with our team and get you an answer.
Thank you. I yield.
Thank you so much. I just want to go back and clarify the budget resolution language that we're going to have on the item of international travel organized by the county executive for the rest of this year, if you can.
Sure. So if you want to make a motion, I guess it seems like the action would be to add language to the budget resolution, specifically the Section G amendment appropriating money to MCEDC. I need to just confirm exactly what that language would be so I can bring that back to full council. But if you want to provide some draft form of that, I'm happy to work
It's what
with
I just said.
Yeah, perfect.
I just said it. So you want me to say it again?
No, it's perfect.
Okay,
Sorry.
good.
So
We
you
have
said
a
that in the
motion?
form.
Well, and I would define
Second.
it even further, executive travel in the first 6 months of the fiscal year.
Yeah,
Okay,
and it was
understood.
already seconded by Council Vice President Balcom, and we're all in favor. There you go. So without objection, Is there anything else that we need to discuss? I don't think so, because we have the item that is going to the reconciliation list that does include the 2.5%. Is there anything else that you need clarity?
No, so you're voting to the full amount on the
Yes.
request? Yeah, understood.
Yes.
Thank
So
you.
without objection. Okay, we're done with this item. Thank you so much for coming here today. We're gonna move on to item number 4, and that's the FY27 operating budget for Worksource Montgomery NDA. If our friends from Worksource Montgomery can please move forward. I see Mr. Featherstone here. And if you're ready, Mr. Ali, you can please kick us off.
Great, thank you. Agenda item number 4, Worksource Montgomery Incorporated NDA. The county executive is recommending an increase of $250,000 above the FY26 approved amount, and that includes $170,000 in programmatic changes, specifically adding expenses to support additional staff at the Upcounty American Jobs Center. Their FY27 total budget would be $3.69 million. Worksource Montgomery has provided some background that's also provided as an attachment to the packet. They've provided some very detailed responses, including an overview of the 9 physical job centers that they manage and the 1 virtual center that they have. And they provide a table showing how many tax-supported employees there are at each one and what different services they all provide. So there's a good just background on the organization in the packet. As you will recall, recently the council redesignated Worksource as the county's workforce development organization, and so that you heard a lot of this content recently. As part of the background, important to reference the Federal Workforce Career Center, which was a new initiative last year. It was ultimately approved as part of the overall budget. It had originally come over as a supplemental using FY25 reserves and eventually was approved as part of the FY26 ongoing budget. But I will note that the total $700,000 was based on a 15-month budget, and they did expect that the Career Center would only last for as long as there was a need. And originally that was estimated to be 15 months. They have provided a biannual report for the FWCC on circle pages 10 and 14. I've also managed to get some base budget information for Worksource, and you can see that on page 3. This is just for FY27 recommended, and they are the WIOA local administrator of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, and so most of their funds actually come from external sources, specifically the federal government and the state government, but of course we also provide county funding to supplement that. You can see that the bulk of their expenses go towards personnel, with about approximately 4.4 going towards programmatic expenses and running those job centers. As an NDA, it also did not receive an OBIT equity tool. So turning to the budget discussion items on page 4, Worksource has provided a detailed description of the need for an additional staffer at the Upcounty American Jobs Center. And this is just to maintain high quality service and the staffing complement they think is necessary. I think they're actually proposing 2 full-time employees, a career advisor and a business services consultant. And so there's just a question of, and part of this is driven by the fact that there's been more visitation to the Upcounty American Job Center. So to the extent that that's also temporary, you may want to understand how, long-term this need is. And we also know you can recommend additions to the budget to be one-time. So if there are sort of these ephemeral policy issues, you can label them as such and then they'd be revisited in subsequent fiscal years. So the details for the position are shown on page 4 and page 5. And then council staff also identified a couple of smaller reductions for the committee's consideration. So the first is relatively small, but again shows a small discrepancy between what Worksource assumed in their draft FY27 budget and the total that the county executive is recommending. That difference is about $57,000. It's not going to support an FTE, so you may want to confirm what the impacts are of not approving that, but it seems like it would be on the margins probably towards those programmatic expenses. There may be some clarification on that figure as well, as Director Featherstone has indicated to me earlier, so you may want to follow up on that one. And the second reduction is related to the Federal Workforce Career Center. So as I mentioned, it was funded with $700,000 for 15 months. And some of that included setting up the center, so it did generally start, I think, with the fiscal year. But they have indicated that funding wouldn't run out until the end of Q1 FY27 because it was 15 months. And so that $700,000, which is assumed for ongoing, is for another 15 months. And so I've recommended reducing that to a 9-month total, which would reflect then the total for 12 months going forward. So you can consider that. And that's all I have. So
Thank you so much. I'm going to turn it to our friends from Worksession Montgomery.
Good morning, Madam President. Good to be before you again, and members of the ECON committee. I'm Anthony Featherstone, Executive Director for our Workforce Development Board here in Montgomery County. I'm joined in the audience by our Deputy Directors, Jessica Sufu and John Hattery, as well as our Director of Government Board Relations, Sarah Vanderwert. Before I kind of talk about FY26 at a high level and the work that we've done this year, work we're proud of, and work that we need to continue to focus on improving. I just want to thank you all for all of your support year over year through budget challenges, through the pandemic, through the federal workforce reductions and so forth. I always say you all make it really easy for us to do workforce development here in Montgomery County. So I'll say it again and say thank you. In FY26, there's a lot that we're proud of. As you may know from recent presentations, our number one priority and focus is system building. We want to make sure that all of our ecosystem partners have a level of awareness and collaboration so that we can coordinate when it comes to serving our mutual customers, and that's Montgomery County businesses and Montgomery County residents. I'm proud to report that we have over 190 partners within our community workforce network now. And as we've asset mapped our county, as I mentioned before, we noticed glaring gaps. And so in FY26, we have supported over 35 partners who are operating programs directly in the community, helping people get trained and become employed very quickly after that training through about $2 million in grants to those 35 partners. And then I think, one thing that we're starting to track moving forward is that, the goal of the Community Workforce Network and that system building initiative is to bring more money into the workforce ecosystem for Montgomery County. And not necessarily more money for WorkSource Montgomery, but it's supporting our partners in their grant applications. And so we've seen a lot of our partners, win, grants coming from the federal government to private sources and so forth. So we're really happy about that. And we're going to continue to track that so we can quantify it moving forward. Serving businesses is one of our primary objectives. Through the end of February this year, we have provided over 4,000 services to over 1,000 businesses, whether it's individual services or businesses have jumped into our job fairs like our reentry symposium that we had this week, where we had about 25 local businesses looking to hire directly folks who are justice impacted. I'm really proud that we've been out in the community working with businesses, trying to help them find the talent that they need today. From a talent pipeline standpoint, we have provided over 39,000 services to 4,000 residents. And as I always say, sometimes, workforce development, it gets kind of, complicated when you talk about the strategy in the labor market. But when people come to our job centers, they generally want a job, a better job, a career pathway. And so I'm proud to say that through February of this year, we have over 3,000 job placements. And those are folks that have come through our American Job Center, which is not just WorkSource Montgomery. It's a coalition of partners within the American Job Center. So they receive services and they are working and employed. For context, you may remember last month we talked about wrapping up FY25. In FY25 we had 3,000 placements total. So we've matched the level of placements from FY25 a little more than halfway through FY26. So while we're proud of that number, we know that number also denotes a higher demand in services and folks coming through our doors who are unemployed and underemployed. So the $144 million in wages as a result of the placements in FY25, we expect that to increase. And as we wrap up each year, we'll be happy to forward on the economic impact report for FY26 once it's completed right around September or October of this year. And obviously the Federal Workforce Career Center was started up in October, is fully operational, has served over 1,500 federal workers, and that center has proved impactful and much needed. You may have seen the press release that in January, Maryland lost an additional 5,400 federal jobs. We know that Montgomery County takes the brunt of that hit or that total. And so we still see a consistent flow of federal workers who are needing assistance when it comes to navigating, the market and their journey towards their next opportunity. And I think lastly, one initiative that we're always, really proud of is the work that we're doing in partnership with Dr. Taylor at Montgomery County Public Schools, Dr. Williams at Montgomery College with the MoCo CAP, Montgomery County Career Advising Program. We're helping students jump in the driver's seat to identify their strengths, interests, work values, and their career themes. And once they name and claim their career themes, they aim them at industries. And so this year we've served over 76,000 students in that partnership with MoCo CAP. I'm really excited that students are reporting at a high level, that they have a high level of career clarity as far as what their themes are and what the world of work could look like for them. But one thing we're also happy to report on is that once students, identify their career themes, we're also working collaboratively to make sure that they're connected to career experiences through, Summarize, through CTE programming at Montgomery County Public Schools, through work-based learning opportunities and so forth. So we've really deepened our partnership over the last year, and we're really, really proud of that. And so those are just some high-level updates for FY26. As I mentioned, there's some things we need to focus on, some things we need to get better on moving forward. I always start with our federal performance. Was really happy to sit here a year ago and say that we had, met or exceeded past all 18 of 18 federal measures. Last month, I reported that the most recent report showed 13 passed and 5 failed. Happy to report that we've cut that down to 15 passed and 3 failed. And so the plan has been executed, and we see those numbers dropping in a tight labor market. And so we'll always, provide federal updates on our WIOA, Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act performance. We really need to focus next year on reducing ALICE outcomes. As we talked about before, ALICE stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, and Employed. So 36% of Montgomery County's population or households are either in poverty or in the ALICE population. And the ALICE population are folks who are employed, but right above the poverty line, but day-to-day life feels a lot like poverty. And so what we are, continuing to do is to integrate ALICE into our measurable equity focus, so that we don't exacerbate the ALICE population. And so that's a real measure, a real target for our board, for our organization, is to make sure that we reduce the ALICE population and we don't just check boxes that you came in and got a job, but you actually are getting a job where there's a career pathway and there's a true livable wage here in Montgomery County. HR1 has impacted, so many things. One thing that we're really keeping watch on and partnering deeply with our Montgomery County Department of Health and Human Services are the SNAP requirement changes, because we've already, seen those impacts on the ground and folks, benefits being impacted and so forth. And so we're collaborating to figure out how the American Job Center can work better with the workforce ecosystem within the Department of Health and Human Services. The Workforce Pell Grant is scheduled to be enacted or implemented on July 1 of 2026. And so that will expand Pell Grant access to folks beyond 4-year, 2-year master's degree and on degree programs. So if you are getting a credential, certification, industry recognized certification, the Pell Grant will be available to you as long as the program is approved. And so the state will be releasing guidance really soon. Once the state releases their guidance, they're playing off of the proposed rule that the federal government released about a month ago. Then we'll be able to huddle as a board, huddle as a local workforce area to figure out how we're going to leverage that funding so that we can make sure that our residents get access to those funds to increase access to training overall. As I mentioned, 5,400 jobs lost. So the federal in January of 2026. So, we know that the federal workforce challenge is still here. So we're going to continue to hunker down and supporting our federal workers and federal contractors who need support. I talked about, working with 1,000 plus businesses this year. we, I think similar to our community asset map that maps all of the workforce resources, we are going to do the same thing for businesses. And so in 2027, FY27, we're going to release a business asset map. And then lastly, we need to do more in Up County, which is why we requested that funds, because the needs are growing there. And so, with that, I just want to say thank you again for your support, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Featherstone. You guys do amazing work, and you do so much. It's unbelievable all the work that gets done by Workforce Montgomery. And I have said it before, I think you guys you're one of the jewels that we have in Montgomery County. We have, I'm going back to page 6, we have as decision points. So we have enhance, add staffing expenses at the Up County American Job Center. And then the recommending reductions that council staff has put forward. With that, I'm gonna open it up for questions from colleagues. You don't have questions? You do? Councilmember Glass.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Featherstone, for the detailed presentation. And I appreciate council staff noting the time period for the funding request. I absolutely agree that it should be on the fiscal year basis, recognizing the emergency measure that we took many months ago and needing to jumpstart that quickly and make sure that it lasted for a while. I have two observations and questions as I'm going through all the information. It's noted that there have been about 1,400 people who've come through the Federal Career Center. Is that right?
Correct. A little more than 1,500 now.
15.
Yes.
15. How many of them have we placed in jobs?
So we have verified through February 20 plus job placements, and those are with direct verification that come to us. A lot of our placements come through indirectly because we put into everybody in the state system, and so as the state runs those tax records and reports out to us annually, quarterly, we're able to gather that information. So the placements are in much more abundance, but we wanted to report on only what we've received, pay stubs and official hardcore documentation on. But we received more, anecdotes of placements. But with all of our programs, we don't directly verify all 3,000 plus placements because everybody's caught in the system that receives services, the Maryland Workforce Exchange. We get those placements with the lag on the back end.
The facility is great. We were there last year when Governor Moore came, and it was a wonderful celebration of partnership and collaboration, meeting the need that our residents clearly have, and there's no denying that. But I do have to admit that I'm a little troubled by the statistic that you just shared, that 1,500 people have gone through the program or received assistance, but only 20 have received verified jobs because of it.
Yeah, and so a little bit of context to that 1,500, we serve people in multiple modalities, and so of that 1,500, 700 plus have engaged with our virtual training center for federal workers, and so those are folks who are self-learning through our LMS, learning management system. So they're not necessarily coming into the center for intensive job placement support. They want to jump into self-paced learning. There are also several hundred folks who've jumped into our professional development workshops or have come to job fairs. I think the number that we really focus on are the folks who say, I really want intensive case management support. And so that number is much less. I think we're at right around 200 folks who are enrolled in receiving intensive case management support up until this point. So while we've served 1,500, it's not a 20 numerator, 1,500 denominator, because people are being served in a bunch of different modalities. And the intensive case management support are the folks who are coming through for that deep dive case management support that 20 comes from. But as I mentioned, there are much more, but we have to wait on a quarterly basis until those wages hit. And so people are served in different categories.
Right. Understand the programs are served in different ways. I get that. The numerator is still a low number based on expectations. And I think what that speaks to is the difficulty that we as a community are facing in that many of the federal jobs that have been lost by this administration are very hard to transfer. And those skills and the availability in our job market here. And so while these resources are being provided to help those people get the jobs, I think we alternatively have to do an even better job of creating those job opportunities because they don't seem to be existing. And we can skill people, train them, provide them with the tools, but if those openings aren't there, that's the problem, which goes back to the previous conversation about economic development. That said, I'm still troubled by the statistic and want to engage at another time as to what the plan is to improve that, because at some point in time, the Federal Job Center will just become the job center because it's still Montgomery County residents who are looking. And as 6 months becomes 1 year, become what will eventually be a 4-year term, unfortunately. Hopefully it doesn't become another term thereafter, but it becomes our reality. And it's no longer an emergency, and it's something we have to feel and tackle in a very different way. So I think this is a much deeper conversation, quite frankly. And then the other question I have is just about all of the organizations that are receiving funding. I recall a conversation that this committee had about 3 years ago. One of the very first conversations this committee had, and it was with MCEDC, and the term we used was mission creep. And as I see the scope of work that's being done and the support that's being provided, in some cases, organizations that are receiving money from many, many different county agencies, I ask whether WorkSource is the right venue, the right organization to be dispersing those funds additionally so when we have these acute needs within the agency itself.
Yeah, so great question. I will note with all of the grantees, in which there are quite a few, all that are listed under the Community Workforce Network, we're roughly about 90+%, with the exception of just a few grantees. Those are privately, funded initiatives through our private funders who are funding our system building initiative to bring workforce system partners together so that we can share data, collaborate, and be more coordinated as we're dealing with as we're serving our residents who are, dealing with the most challenges to economic mobility. But I absolutely, understand your point, Council Member Evans. But I think, this work kind of speaks to one of the main issues that we've seen with our workforce system. A lot of different providers and a lot of our customers have complex needs, and you're going to many different providers. And so it started with the Workforce Recovery Network during the pandemic, where we expanded programs, and then it just kind of evolved into a grant funding program that provides much more than just grants. It's technical assistance, it's capacity building, it's convening, and so forth, but it lends to us pulling that network of partners together.
And you referred to private funders. Can you expand upon that?
Yes, so the Community Workforce Network is funded by the JWAS Marriott Foundation.
So these are not, those grant disbursements are not from county allocated funds?
No, they're not.
Okay, that answers, so that addresses the budgetary aspect of it, and I appreciate you sharing that, and good to know. And I look forward to a deeper conversation about how we unfortunately deal with what is becoming the new normal, and recognizing the need to continue evolving to meet the needs of our residents and those who continue to be affected by this administration. So thank you, Mr. Patterson.
Councilmember Lorian Sales.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify the number. Is it you've served 1,500 people or the 1,155 in the packet on page 2?
So I'm just going to page 2 now, Councilmember Sales. We've served over 1,500 is the number.
Okay.
Okay, and I'm just getting to page 2. We're on page 2 of your
In the third paragraph from the bottom up, the February 5th work session.
Yep, so 1155 was during the first quarter of operations. That was October through December of 2025, but through February 28th, which is the report period for this report, it's been over 1,500 federal workers.
Okay, okay. And so of the 20, do you have like an average timeline for how long, you know, the person contacted the job center and they were in the job? And do we know if these 20 people, are we tracking how long they're staying in the job after they get the jobs?
So it really, you know, kind of, spans when it comes to, how long they've been in the market. Some have been really quick placements. One you may have heard from during the press conference, and some folks it's taken longer. They had been displaced for 7 or 8 months, dating back to before the FWCC, before it opened. So yes, we do track the information long term, which is why we make sure everybody is registered and entered into our Maryland Workforce Exchange system, because we get data on the back end on them retaining their employment for up to four quarters, 1 year after they've obtained employment.
Okay, I'd like to see that. And then I know that a lot of our, federal employees that were disconnected or were cut from their jobs, fired, their incomes were much higher than what we're seeing in the private sector. And do you have information about what they were receiving from the federal government versus the jobs that they are acquiring now through this program? Are you
Yes,
tracking
so
that information as well?
We do get that information. Don't have the details in front of me right now, but we get the information on what they were making, and we can we bounce it against what they're making now, and then that's always a part of the career coaching, career counseling process, is to kind of level set through labor market information on what the expectations are based on their new career targets.
Okay. And I know that we're hearing a lot of people have had to move out of the county because of unaffordability and because they lost their jobs. Have you worked with anyone? Are you tracking that information of who's leaving the county because they were cut from the federal workforce, sought job placement, and have not been successful?
I know we've heard anecdotes, and I won't say that they're plentiful, but we don't track the migration data per se. But what I do know is that from December to January, and hopefully it speaks to your point of your question a little bit, Councilmember Sales, is that our labor force did fall by 7,000 individuals. Employment stayed consistent at 534,000, and we lost 6,000 of our unemployed individuals. And so we don't know if it's just them dropping out of the labor force because they're no longer looking, or if it's because outward migration. The migration data we do get lags, usually about 18 to 24 months, but we've heard anecdotes at a very, very small scale, but can't report really on a macro level where people are going.
Okay. Who provides that information? Is that from taxes or the comptroller?
We use Lightcast, which provides Lightcast.
Lightcast?
LITECAST, and it's a labor market information system that provides us information on where people are coming from, who are moving into Montgomery County, and where people are going, who are moving out of Montgomery County. We'll be happy to provide a report to you on that as well.
Okay. And then how quickly are we moving through the process? When someone comes in, how quickly are they being seen? Do we have anyone that's on a wait list waiting to be seen?
We're seeing people pretty quickly. Folks who are wanting to do the light touch services, workshops, job fairs and events like that. They're able to jump in at their leisure. Folks who are seeking intensive case management. There is, I believe, I don't know the exact number right now. It's not triple digits, but there's a list that we're working through because we're getting referrals every day. But we are able to assign people to career counselors fairly quickly. we do have 2 career counselors, 2 FTEs within the center. They are
There's
managing.
only 2 counselors working?
And they're supported by folks who are doing the direct job placement, business engagement to help with employment. And so, yes, two full-time FTE career counselors right now. We are hiring somebody else to support that program currently. And I know our career counselors are working with about, I think, 80 plus individuals right now. And that number moves based on employment, folks going out and new folks coming in.
So that new employee, is that in addition to the employee for the Up County Center? Or is that different? That
is in addition.
Okay, all right. And then what role is the county's Office of Human Resources playing in expediting the process, supporting this process? How are you working with the county, given the legislation that we passed to hire internally and fast track those opportunities?
Yeah. So our Federal Workforce Career Center talent placement consultants are in communication with Director Anderson's staff. So they are working together to provide referrals there. Director Anderson and I actually have a meeting next week to talk about how do we increase the partnership and referrals and so forth. The Department of Human Resources at all of our job fairs and so forth. And so we have a deep working relationship. But Director Anderson and I are meeting next week to talk about how do we edify that.
Oh, good. I'm looking forward to hearing those numbers. And then what demographic data can you share about who you're serving?
Yeah, so we can provide a full breakdown on who we're serving, whether it's age.
1,500.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Balcom.
Thank you. Thank you for this. I think that from the perspective of the Federal Workforce Center, at some point those services should be subsumed in everything else that you're doing, right? And I know that when we set this up, there was a specific, distinct reason to have the Federal Workforce Center and it was important to show our federal workers that we were doing this. And but at some point, those services will be part of what you do for all residents. Don't know if you've thought about that much.
Yeah. So yes, Councilmember Balcom, thank you for that question. We've actually, I guess I would say, we started thinking about it well before 2025. One thing that I learned very quickly in 2021 when I stepped into this position is that we had a lot of folks walking into the American Job Center, whether it's new graduates with degrees, whether it's individuals crosswalking with experience like federal workers into other industries who were seeking support from the American Job Center, and a lot of the federal programs just didn't fit within what their desire was from a service level standpoint. And so the Federal Workforce Career Center was a center that I think was really needed in Montgomery County. And so what our hope and plans are is to evolve the Federal Workforce Career Center when the federal reductions is not, an ever-present issue, into a professional services career center similar to what the state stood up in Anne Arundel County, the POAC, the Professional Outplacement Assistance Center for job seekers with high levels of experience and prior, high levels of compensation and so forth, because that's been a population that we've been serving, but we haven't been serving in the best manner just because the programs and services, they don't meet their needs as they do with individuals who come in with high levels of barriers, have been incarcerated, have differing abilities, folks that are outlined on our barrier checklist when it comes to, the federal legislation that governs us. And so we'd love to rebrand and continue it on as the Professional Services Career Center, because those folks obviously will continue to come in, maybe for different reasons for services. And so that's the long-term strategy.
Thank you. So I guess and thank you to Councilmember Glass of talking about the numbers of people getting the job versus the number of people coming through. And I think that, of course, you're providing service, but is it direct service to get the jobs? And so when we think about, so I was thinking about it from going the other direction when I mentioned it, right? So of saying this is the job center, and we can treat everyone without having a separate standalone brand. If you evolve into the professional services and treat and see everyone, not necessarily the federal workers, I guess the issue is, would we have the similar results of greeting those people, meeting those people, providing services to those people, but not having the results of the jobs, right? Because to me, it's having the relationship with employers and having the relationship with the types of employers that are hiring highly skilled, highly educated people coming from the federal government or coming in off the street. Would they know to come to the job center for that? So I would question whether I don't have any doubt that you could serve that population. My question would be, would you be able to have jobs available and actually place that demographic?
So yes, we would absolutely be able to place that demographic. It wouldn't that be easy work, especially considering the labor market today, and who knows what it would look like in a few years. But we could place individuals through that program. I think related to just reporting on jobs, which is really the return on investment for any job center or job program. I want to kind of go back to the lag time and how we report employment outcomes, because I know 20 is a very low number when it's compared to 15. And so I'm going to be happy to provide a follow-up report once that information is available. But we would need to figure out how to provide more real-time information. And I think we have, mediums to do that. They do, cost money to provide real-time information. But what we would need to do is we need to, make sure that we provide you with consistent reporting on the back end to disaggregate the numbers out of the 3,000, which a lot of those are federal workforce career center placements, but we just weren't able to disaggregate it. We went with the numbers that we received hardcore documentation for placements on. So long way of saying, yes, confident that, those folks do need services and that we would be able to place them. I think the challenge would be in any employment program where you want to base employment reports on wages coming in, which means that you're actually employed. There's a lag time. And so we'd have to work to try to get you numbers more real time so you're comfortable with the numerator denominator. Which I believe you will be once we get that number in another quarter or so, but I always want to be, candid when we speak about what we can verify in our system right now.
Yeah, I think we need a lot more information on who's getting jobs, the number of people getting jobs, so I don't know if we can have that, how long it's going to take to get that, but I think that we stood this program up for a specific, to get the people jobs. So I think we need to have a better understanding of whether we're actually doing that. So I think that's one issue. And a complete separate issue, I know that we're going to, and of course I want more services up in the Up County, of course. So from a reconciliation list perspective, can we, I don't know how my colleagues feel, or Mr. Ali feels about putting the jobs in two different tranches. And I don't know if I'm the first person to use tranche in this budget season, but because that way, it's not all or nothing. It's not a yes or no, and there's a possibility of looking at one versus the other.
So the motion is to
two jobs.
The
Yes.
1.7?
Yeah, it is.
The Up County Job Center is 2 jobs.
Two full-time employees.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, yeah, we can do that.
Yeah. I'm fine with
So
that.
I support that
Yes,
motion.
that's fine.
So, and then, so we have, as part of the reconciliation list, instead of 170, you're gonna divide it in 2, and we also have the 2.5% inflation, percent for $79,000. I'm on page 4 for everybody following. So we split that plus the 2.5%, but then we gotta talk about the reductions.
Can I just ask a clarifying question, just purely process, because it's the first tranching for the budget that I've seen so far. I think the guidance we were getting was to try to avoid this. So can we note that we would reduce it by half, or would you prefer to just have 2 items on the list?
Yeah.
I see the problem with.
Mike.
Yeah.
I could probably holler this one. The problem with the tranching is that when we get down to it, it really is a yes or no, and we're not doing the math, right?
Sure.
So I don't think noting it's still going to be a yes or no, whether we note it or not. So
Okay.
I would, and I'm looking at the president.
I told people not to do this. But
I see your point. I mean, try not to. It's a tough year.
Yeah, it is a tough year, but the issue is that if we're gonna make decisions, we need to think about, is this a yes or no answer? I don't think it is. It's a do we want? Can we afford 1? Can we afford 2? Can we afford none? And putting it on the reconciliation list as a straight 170, we don't have that choice of saying, give them 1. So
I am not gonna stop you from doing it. Just don't tell the other committees.
Nobody's watching, right?
except for the million at home.
And just remember, we have a 6.3-cent property tax increase.
Right.
But hey, we'll get through that. So that's the recommendation. Can I say without discussion, or you have a question on this particular item? Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to better understand the mobile jobs. What is it called? The mobile job unit center. Yes. How often is it, going around to the centers across?
Yeah, so, and I can provide the exact data on that for you as well.
Oh, okay, so there's a set schedule for the year?
There's a set schedule based on request, based on some sites that we're there, on a recurring basis. But, when I look at our calendar, our mobile job center is deployed at least 3 times per week to, communities, to events and so forth. And so, it's still in high demand and has been since we deployed it in 2022.
So how often is it at the Up County Regional Service Center? Because currently there's no one there now. Or are you just adding staff Up County?
There is staff that are located at the Regional Service Center. We just moved to the other side of the building to the left.
Okay.
If that makes sense. And so the hub is completely in that space on the right. And so the job center is now on the left. And so we do have a few staff members there that they come certain times during the week. The mobile job center was there 2 weeks ago, and it does, go there, I think maybe, once a month. But usually it's deployed to other, community sites. But it does frequent the Up County RC.
Okay, if I can get that schedule, because it would be helpful to share with the community when it's going to be in the community, would be helpful. Thank you.
Councilmember Glass.
This is a good discussion. I appreciate Councilmember Balcom for recognizing the importance of it and wanting to tranche it to salvage what we can in what is a very difficult budget, right? So in looking at these 2 positions, and Mr. Featherstone, thank you for acknowledging that there is staff already there, right? So this is neither a new program nor it is denying the community anything. It is just additional. The 2 positions are the career advisor position, which is another career counseling position, which is core to the function of the organization and the mission. Second position is business services consultant, and in looking at the description of that, which is on page 4 of the staff packet, it is connecting businesses, and workforce needs and promoting programs. To me, that is what the Small Business Navigator program does. And I see that as redundant to other executive branch departments. And so I do not support funding that because it is a redundancy of county effort, which speaks to another issue that we have to, I think, more closely align some of this work to the Small Business Navigator and to other executive functions, because that is critical function, but it is already being done by staff. And so if colleagues want, happy to put half of that. Pardon? So these are the two staff. These are the two staff. So that 170 is for two staff, one of whom is the business services, which is a redundancy of effort. So if colleagues want to put that one position on.
If I could.
Mr. Featherstone?
Yeah, if I could just note that position, there is similarity when it comes to engaging with businesses, but I think the difference is that when an individual walks into a job center, there's the career advisor who's helping the individual with preparedness, with barrier remediation and that level of support so that personal infrastructure is in place. But then there's also an expectation that we match that person with a job, with an employer, and so forth. And so while it serves businesses, there's a direct connection to the customers who are looking for employment, who are relying on that business service individual to bring employers, bring opportunities directly to them, or to make that connection. So I just wanted to make that distinction, that there is similarity, but it's a little distinct because they're working directly with the customer.
And I hear you, and I agree with you upon the distinction of those two positions for which you're asking. My point is that in other aspects of the executive branch, there are individuals who walk the streets, who knock on doors, who give their business cards out to small businesses saying, is there permitting help I can provide? Are there other needs I can provide? And quite frankly, they should be the lifeline saying, not only am I here to help you with the aspects of government, but when you need employment, contact me, and I should be your point of contact. I think that's the most efficient way because those people are already out there and already have those relationships. But the need is absolutely there, and I think we already have the staff to provide it.
So can you clarify, so you have a motion?
Yes, so the motion is to change that 170 by half, assuming that is what the salary was. I can't speak if it was 50-50. Pardon me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Assuming it was half, right. And then move that forward on the rec list.
I need a second.
I have a question before we second this, because if there is no, outlined understanding between the Office of Workforce Development and our small business entity, I would like to hear more about how they're going to collaborate to fulfill this model to ensure that the Up County is being served. And we have someone coming up to share how this collaboration can work.
Thank you, Councilmember Sales, and appreciate the discussion in front of you. The Business Center team does work very closely with Mr. Featherstone and Worksession Montgomery. The issue is one of expertise. If there is a business that requires workforce support, there has to be someone at Workforce Montgomery to receive it. So while we do have the business liaisons who are out in the field, and the Small Business Navigator and Nadia Klute and that team, and they can certainly evangelize and say, hey, we've got this great program, and make the referral. That doesn't, they don't have that inherent expertise to then follow up and connect them and provide the resources.
Because one job is focused on preparing someone for the workforce, and small businesses, the Business Center Services consultant would be receiving the opportunities that the career advisor would be preparing them for. So those are the way is that the way you're thinking about it, or? is there a way that you could share consultants from the Small Business Center?
So we'd have to have a lot of discussion on what that model looks like.
Yeah.
Because
the Small Business Center isn't new, and that hasn't been happening. So if it was that easy, I feel like it would have happened by now. So I need more details on how we're going to actually do that before we fully eliminate a position and not have any discussion on this.
Yeah, so, I absolutely, I think, as Ken mentioned, we do collaborate a lot when businesses need, employment support, but as he mentioned, the business service folks at WorkSource Montgomery, they're making those connections with customers for employment as opposed to handling the more macro level things, job fairs, grants and so forth, the consultative approach that we take. This is more of a kind of a granular micro level approach, so we would have to definitely have a lot of conversation on how those two worlds, or if those two worlds.
Go ahead, Ken.
Make it quick, because I'm going to make a motion right now, please.
If I had to make a suggestion, I would say let us give us a task, and we can come back and articulate how the two functions work together when the business center comes up before you.
I'd appreciate that before making a formal motion.
Look, we need to make reductions. I'm gonna make it very straightforward. We need to make reductions.
Strategic reductions.
Yeah, okay.
This is about duplication of effort.
Exactly.
This is about everybody in county government wanting everybody of their own to be out in the field working solely for them, and that is duplication. I appreciate the good work that the small business navigators do. They are literally boots on the ground, knocking on doors who already have established relationships. They're the ones who should be the point of contact when help is needed, when employment is needed.
Okay, I'm gonna move forward. And I'm gonna call for a motion. We cannot have duplication. I'm sure we're gonna get it done, and you guys can work together in the future. So what I heard is a motion to break these two positions and have on the table for the reconciliation the position for business center consultant. No, for the career advisor. For the career advisor for, let's say, $85,000 plus the 2.5% that we talked about. And then reduced the other position that deals with the business service. We'll see how things go throughout the rest of the year. I encourage you to please work closely with the business center that I think they do a great job, and I guess it's obvious that you're not working closely enough with them. So, and I knew you were working closely, but I guess that relationship needs to be strengthened. We had to make reductions, and this is tough. So there's a motion by Councilmember Glass to do so. Can we get a second? Second by Council Vice President Malcolm. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 4. So it passed unanimously. So, and that also includes as I mentioned before, the 2 point. Okay, so now, actually, going back to that, can I also now get a motion with that position plus a 2.5% that we talked about? I'm going to say without objection, we agreed on that, 2.5%. And then the other item on the agenda are the potential reductions that staff pointed out on page 5. So we have the around $57,000 reduction, and then the 280. Does Worksession Montgomery want to defend any of those two, or are you okay with them?
So with the Federal Workforce Career Center, the carryover into next year is estimated to be $240,000. So that's a little less than the $280,000 noted in the packet. The $57,000 was a miscalculation miscalculation from what was in the budget to what the county executive approved.
So it's 240 instead of 280. Can staff confirm that? Okay, so we're talking about 240. And what about the 57,385? Is that accurate?
That delta is not accurate. It was a miscalculation on our part in the draft FY27 budget that's in the package.
It does sound accurate. Is that what you said?
No,
It does not?
It's not accurate. It was a miscalculation on our part that created that 57,000 delta.
Okay. So,
Yeah, I guess the question is if it would have a programmatic impact, because otherwise, and based on the budget, it would only reduce programmatic expenses and not personnel. So it's up to,
so it wouldn't have an impact?
It wouldn't be material, no.
Okay. So you're okay with this?
We're okay with that.
Okay, that's what we needed to know. Does anybody have a question? Because we have two more items.
Yes, I just have one final question.
Thank you.
I just had one final question with this new agreement or opportunity to work together. When can we expect an update on how that would work?
As Mr. Hartman-Espada noted, he may have an update during the Business Center team discussion on April 30th, and I'll make sure to follow up and include discussion of that.
Thank you.
With that objection, we approve this report as amended in committee work session. Okay? Thank you so much for coming today. We're going to move on to the next item.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Item number 5 is the FY27 operating budget conference and Visitors Bureau, NDA. If we can have the President and CEO of Visit Montgomery come forward. And with that, Mr. Ali, if you can please kick us off.
Okay, item 5, this is the Conference and Visitors Bureau, NDA, otherwise known as Visit Montgomery. The organization is known as Visit Montgomery. I have the team here. The county executive is just recommending the inflationary adjustment, which would be equivalent to about $58,000. We've also noted one potential reduction, which I can get into. Turning to page 2, you have an overview of the department. They are our destination marketing organization. They help secure, room nights at the hotel and promote the county's hospitality and tourism industry. They have provided a few updates. There's lots of details in the packet. They've also provided their annual report. They are currently wrapping up their strategic plan update, and that may be something worthwhile to consider reviewing at the committee when it's ready. They've also been working on their rural branding strategy, which they had funding for from external sources last year. And they've provided a brief summary of the progress to date, but they've achieved some project milestones and have worked on some brand messaging and implementation plans. They've also provided their annual report, as I mentioned. Then for FY27, they're working on a few things that they've noted also on circle page 4 to 7, but working on more branding, storytelling, direct outreach, and other aspects of their work plan that they'll continue to move forward on. As an NDA, they don't receive an OBIT tool equity analysis, and there's no enhancement that the county executive has recommended. County staff or council staff has identified one potential reduction, which we've noted going back a few fiscal years now. And so I think the easiest way to understand this is just to look at the charts on page 4 and 5. So effectively, Visit Montgomery's funding comes directly from 7% of the hotel motel tax revenue. That is the only requirement for their budget. And that's not uncommon for DMOs, but this in Montgomery County, there's a few issues with that. Hotel motel tax revenues have not recovered to pre-pandemic levels, as you can see on Figure 1. Hotel motel tax revenue is not growing, and it's actually unclear when they would continue to grow in a consistent way year over year at or above inflation, i.e. keeping up with the county executive's inflationary increases. But of course, despite the uncertainty in growth and tapering off of hotel motel tax revenues, Visit Montgomery's budget does increase every year with inflationary increases that the county provides. The county's appropriation, therefore, above the 7% will continue to grow, and this year it's as high as it's been since we first provided an appropriation in FY22 to cover operating losses from the pandemic. And so you can see on Figure 2 on page 5 that in FY27, the county executive is proposing $953,000 above the required mandated amount for Visit Montgomery, but that's effectively a base budget for them, to be clear. If you turn to page 6, you see a table showing their FY26 approved budget, their estimate for FY27, and then a version of the budget that assumes no amount above the mandated tax. One quick point is that the county executive's estimate of 953 is not reflected here. It seems that they're assuming slightly less in terms of what the additional appropriation. Is possible that they drafted this budget before they had OMB's final fiscal estimates for hotel motel tax revenue. So we actually don't have the impacts of a budget that doesn't assume 953,000, just the 733,000 amount. So I'll explain that in a second. But the point is, you can see the difference between the middle column and the third column, which basically shows what would happen to their organization if that amount isn't improved. There's some impact on administrative costs, maybe a very small impact on personnel, but by and large, it's coming on their programmatic expenses related to business development, marketing, and destination and group sales. So they would attend fewer events and go to fewer conferences and things like that. If the committee were to recommend the tax-only scenario, like I said, those programmatic expenses are most likely to be impacted. So it's a little complicated, but basically there is a few ways to sort of consider this if you want to consider it at all, which is obviously you could place the entire amount above the mandated amount on the reconciliation list because it's not legally required, but we wouldn't know what the impacts are. They have drafted a budget assuming a $733,000 appropriation, so if that's reduced, we do know what the impacts are, and that's shown in the third column on page 6. And so, but beyond that, to the extent that most of these impacts are coming from their programmatic expenses, you could reduce this appropriation above the mandated amount by any amount in increments of $50,000 to $100,000, and you could ask them what the trade-offs would be, but we don't have that documented here. So with that, I'll pause and turn it over. We do have a presentation from Visit Montgomery as well.
Can you focus your presentation to answering this question that we have in front of us? So do your presentation, but just know that that's the heart of the whole discussion.
Madam Chair, maybe we skip the presentation and I can give you some talking points. The reason is...
I think the presentation will help you. I'm just going to make that clear. If you think it's going to help your case, do it.
Okay, let's go through it, but we'll go through it quickly.
Yeah.
I was prepared to just go to the end, but this is great. No, we'll move through quickly. Let's see, industry trends. So this is lodging data. This shows you that for the period of July through February, occupancy is down 5.7%. The next chart is just a line chart that shows you, next slide below, thank you. Occupancy, ADR, I can't see this far, RevPAR, total supply, demand, revenue. You can just see where everything's been trending over the last couple years. This is what we call pacing report. So this is showing you through our source key data that was just run on April 1st, what we think is going to happen, what the industry thinks is going to happen through data collection and seeing bookings in the future. That this chart will show you what the expected performance will be. Visitor snapshot, I like this slide. Our efforts are to market in the Mid-Atlantic, New York, Philly, New Jersey, and you can see that's where the visitor is originating from. So our marketing is working. Visitor snapshot tells you what people are spending, where people are coming from. So this is all data we have through research tools that we did not have in the past. The research tools have tremendously helped us. Okay, let's walk through year to date. Let me see if I can catch up. Okay. Let me go back to the previous slide. This is important. On page 5 of your packet, there were assumptions that the tax would decrease by 10%. we believe that hotel demand in our market is going to improve in FY27. Here are some of the factors why. America's 250th celebrations in DC, the NFL draft coming to DC, KPMG Women's PGA Championship is coming in fiscal year 27. Through February of 26, citywide events in DC. Those are important because those events compress to hotels in Bethesda and Silver Spring. Those citywide events are up 11%, and room nights associated with those events are up 25%. We've seen a little more activity in the government market, which has really been the biggest challenge for us in FY26. That was completely unexpected. So a lot of DMOs are seeing declining traffic because of AI-generated answers when you go to do Google searches. We're actually seeing growth. Page views are up 15%, more engaged sessions up 35%. Our winter and fall campaign was a $30,000 investment, brought 1.8 million impressions, 7,000 room nights, $1 million in revenue. That's a 26-to-1 return. During the same time frame, we ran an AI chatbot ad campaign to target the drive-in market, and we achieved a 9% click-through rate. Letitia, who's behind me, because of that campaign, was asked to come and speak and present that as a case study at a national level. Really proud of that. I think I just mentioned that we are talking more, we're going to be talking more to consumers by being at consumer trade shows versus all just trade shows meeting with meeting professionals. This is a slide with kind of all of our sub-brands. These are all the sub-brands we were able to create as a result of EDA grant money. That is all gone. Next slide. This is a visual on the Tastemakers Trail and what we'll be doing in this fiscal year through grant funding from the Maryland Alcohol Manufacturing Promotion Fund that was awarded to us for $226,000. And the last couple slides is an update on, this is very important. So we have two business development reps, two sales reps that their job is to go out and find group business to attract to the county. We added 3 new trade shows this year in the corporate and association market as an effort to offset some of the loss from the government travel sector. Next slide is just the group tour market trade shows. So the bottom grid here, booking production from our staff is up 51% year over year. We've given them more tools. We've gone to more trade shows. The staff, as I mentioned, have shifted their efforts from government prospecting to corporate and association. When comparing their Q3 of 25 to Q3 26, their definite bookings are up 202%. Tour and travel is up 224%. Association market, 240%. Corporate market bookings are up 100%. The reason for this is just being in the marketplace and prospecting and going to trade shows and developing relationship with meeting professionals. The trends here that I want to mention is that student travel continues very strong and very little cancellations. Student travel also is not at the same revenue level as a corporate traveler. So therein lies shifts in revenues. And some of the key bookings from this group, there's actually an event coming this month that generated 1,200 room nights. We the People. You can see the list of all the other events that have been booked. And at the bottom, I want to note that we bid to host the Society of American Travel Writers, their Eastern Conference. And we won the bid. We found out just this past Monday. This gives us the opportunity to host journalists that are top tier journalists here for their conference, but it also allows us the opportunity to showcase our community to them, and then they go back and they write really good stories about us, and it's earned media and doesn't cost us. It's free advertising. And then the Rural Branding Project, I'm not going to go too deep into that. We do want to come back and walk you through that project from beginning to end and talk about the implementation. Can I walk through some closing comments that will address some questions? Thank you. I've been listening and watching the budget challenges. Our organization doesn't just drive room taxes. We also bring visitors here that are day trip visitors. Tourism economics data from 24 shows that 8.9 overnight and day trip visitors spent $2.4 billion in our economy and generated $23 million in hotel taxes. Our role in the community is valuable in helping businesses beyond hotel tax collections. Our team works hard, smart, with the size budget we have. But visitors have a lot of choices in this region, and so it is a struggle for us to continue to secure our market share. Fairfax County DMO is at $9.9 million, Annapolis 5.6, Alexandria 5.1. Arlington is in a current funding formula that's going to provide a $5 million budget for them, Loudoun 4.2, Frederick 3.4, Montgomery 2.88. Over the last several years, we were seeing progress. In FY23, we saw hotel collections go up. We were not anticipating the impact from the federal government reductions, changes, no travel and meetings. So that has been a struggle for us. Since FY22, the county has collected $107 million in hotel taxes. You reinvested, thank you, $10.7 million into our programming. This is a 10% allocation. The law is 7%, and we've been provided 10%. Thank you. Our budget request to the executive branch was flat to FY26. The inflationary increases approved from FY24 to FY27 represent 21% of that $9 million figure. Small reductions in funding can have a disproportionate impact on our local economy, our local tourism economy. The suggested cut is 41% of our total appropriation. We're asking for conversation and support today.
Wasn't sure. And I appreciate you, and it was a great presentation. Straight to the point, give me the data, awesome. I understand and I appreciate also the staff recommendation for potential reductions. I think for them, for Visit Moco, I have a hard time agreeing with the staff, but I appreciate you for doing that. I think this is the type of investment that the county needs to continue giving. And at some point, and for the record, the team from Visit Moco and I have had conversations about how can we, I'm going to use the word restructure, how you guys get money. And we agreed on pausing that until you finish your internal discussions. And I hope that we can pick that up, as I mentioned to you on our one-on-one meeting, perhaps this summer or no later than the fall, to do so. But because of that conversation that I have not shared with colleagues, I'm saying it right now, I'm going to stick with the county executive recommendation. That's my personal opinion. I wonder who wants to go next. Who you? Okay, Council Vice President Balcom.
So I agree completely. So if we look at the hotel tax and we give 7% to Visit Montgomery, it means that we get 93% of the tax, and which is $21 million, would be $21 million in the last year. So we wouldn't be getting that amount if it wasn't for Visit Montgomery. And so I support the county executive's budget.
Councilmember Glass.
Appreciate it. I support the executive's recommendation as well, but do have one question. It was noted that occupancy is down 5.7%. Do you know what the occupancy rate is regionally? Trying to get a better sense of what this administration is doing to our tourism at large.
Everyone is struggling. I would say, from what I remember from the Smith travel data, Arlington was less hit than any other jurisdiction than DC. So when we don't have large events and there are challenges, people are going to stay in DC because the rates go down. So naturally, Arlington really has done pretty well, but Fairfax, Montgomery, all of the other destinations are down. We do have that data.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Just wanted to elevate it. I assumed it was true, but wanted to elevate it because as we talk about the economic effects of the federal government, it affects our tourism as well. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Lorian Sells.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the brief presentation. I know the market's hard, and we also have lots of competition with Airbnbs, and so I didn't know if you had any information about occupancy rates and if we've seen an increase in that market in the county.
That's a great question. Yes, we have. It does ebb and flow, but there are definitely more people staying in Airbnbs in Montgomery County. We do collect Airbnb taxes, not directly from the host, but Airbnb writes a check, from what I understand, every month to finance for the tax collections, the same amount, the 7%.
Okay.
I don't believe we collect from VRBO, but I'm not positive.
Oh.
I actually would like to talk further about that topic. There's been some new state legislation that's going to change inspection of Airbnbs in Montgomery County and across the state.
Okay.
And it is competing with the hotel industry.
Yes.
And I will tell you, in 8 years, we've had not one inquiry for a new hotel to be developed in the county. So we're hoping going forward we'll get some interest, but there is definitely a shift. But we are collecting the taxes.
Okay. And yeah, I would like to get a better understanding outside of Airbnb, VRBO, if there are any other sites that we are overlooking and how we can start collecting, and if that's retroactive. I don't know, Ken, if you can get back to us on that, or if someone has something to share, please. And introduce yourself.
For the record, Matt Libber. I'm a board member for Visit Montgomery, but I'm also the legislative chair for the Maryland Tourism Coalition.
Oh, okay.
There's actually a state bill that passed last year that won't go into effect until 28.
Oh, okay.
That all short-term rental taxes will be collected at the controller's office and then disseminated out to the counties. They delayed the implementation until 28 because there's some issues at the controller's office they need to sort out before that'll happen. But eventually we will be collecting all of that across the state to make sure that all the counties are getting that money.
Okay, as long as we can get some information to our businesses as soon as possible, and
I'll get you a
share
bill
some
number on that from
timeline.
last year.
Perfect, thank you.
But can you clarify, Mr. Harmon, as well, if you have the answer, the tax that we're already collecting for Airbnbs, where is that money going? Because it's not going to Visit Moco. It is more than 100.
Yes, there is the Treasury Office can share a report with you.
But you are,
and that report,
you are getting that money.
Yes.
Okay, okay, that's clear now. I knew the county was collecting it, but it wasn't clear to me that it was being sent to you. But you're saying it is. Are you sure? You don't look, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you for that. Without objection, we are in agreement with the county executive's recommendation. We're gonna move on to the last item of the agenda, and that's item number 6, Conference Center NDA. Mr. Ali, if you can please kick us off.
Okay, last item for the committee today, Conference Center NDA. The county executive is just recommending an increase reflected, it's just wage increase and compensation adjustments for the one FTE that's employed through the NDA. That is Ms. Bakila, who's also the chair of the Conference Center Management Committee. The Conference Center is, Montgomery County is the owner of the Conference Center in North Bethesda and has a management agreement with Marriott to manage it. This NDA funds the position, as I noted. It also creates the required reserve for non-routine repairs, alterations, improvements, or rather funds those. Then it also creates a designated reserve as required by the management agreement of $400,000. And the management agreement that the county and Marriott had was first approved in 2004. It was updated again last year, as you're all aware, in 2025, and that was discussed during the budget work sessions last year as well. The NDA has a couple of benefits, not just sort of managing this conference center, which brings an economic impact, but it also generates a fiscal impact to the county. You can see the table on page 3 that shows the profit and loss from the conference center and how that flows down to the county. So just at a high level, they have total sales. That translates to a gross operating profit. At that point, fees are taken out from Marriott based on percentages that are required in the management agreement. Then there are some non-owner incoming, or rather expenses, that Marriott's paying on behalf of the county. And then there's an additional expense that they'll figure out on a year-by-year basis, and then based on that, they calculate their earnings, which is then distributed to the county. And you can see what that has been. So there was obviously a net loss during the COVID years, and then it's starting to recover. And for 2025, it's starting to exceed what it was prior to the pandemic. Although total sales are more or less around the $20 to $21 million, as you can see in the table. There are potential risks of the fiscal impact. There is a management committee, council staff is a member on that, and so we get quarterly updates on that. The change in the federal administration did impact business and the ability to secure some of the business that they had historically, and with funding cuts as well to the federal government, there was just changes in that business, and Marriott's adapting, and they've pointed out sort of how their strategy for adapting, which is they're reaching out to non-traditional groups, doing marketing to third-party planners and inviting them to meetings, and just doing a lot more active work. It was also pointed out during the last board meeting that there was some activity from labor groups that was impacting the conference center. Right now, based on the current estimates and lost business in FY26, it's a relatively small fiscal impact. But it's unclear what that looks like going forward. Possibly organizations like Visit Montgomery may be able to provide some insight into that as well. We did ask the county executive for some, for his take on this. And according to the county executive, you can see the question and answer that we asked. And it seems that currently for FY26, it seems the biggest risk is to county days. Or the ability to use them. And so the county executive, to the extent that they support the rights of conference center employees to organize and bargain for getting a labor peace agreement as part of their agreement with Marriott, it seems that the cost of sort of this dispute and lack of a resolution so far is that the county effectively doesn't utilize its county days with a relatively small fiscal impact. It's unclear what the next steps should be. It's only relevant to the budget to the extent that there could be future fiscal impacts, but obviously one of the main puts and takes for this agreement is also getting the ability to provide below market rates to nonprofit partners that we use the conference days for, and that's potentially off the table as well. So with that, I'll leave it to the county executive staff.
If only Marriott will come forward and just sign the agreement. But is there anything else that you would like to add?
Thank you, Council President Fanny Gonzalez. We have had a number of conversations. I think the next milestone is the hotel is currently listed for sale. As you know, the hotel is a long-term ground lease, currently owned by Brookfield Properties. When that sale goes through, becomes an opportunity to again engage with the hotel owner and with Marriott, which operates both facilities, on this issue.
Does anybody else have any questions? So without objection, yes.
Sorry, there's one decision point also in the back, sorry. Oh, sure. So yeah, just going through the management agreement, this is again sort of nitpicking, just the fun of working on budgets every year. But the requirement for in the management agreement is they provide the $400,000 reserve, and then there's the personnel costs that we assume. The gap between that amount right now, based on what we know the personnel cost would be for FY27, is $15,737. Now, if you look at the 3 bullets for what the NDA supports, which is on page 1 and 2, it's possible that this amount supports non-routine repairs, but I don't have an estimate of that. It's unclear if that's actually the case. We just wanted to make sure it was confirmed. It's not a huge savings, but it's important just to be clean and make sure that these things aren't just carried forward every year. So if there's no need for it, it could be eliminated, but.
Can the executive team respond to that? You may want to say it again, Mr. Ali.
Yeah, so the NDA is right now supporting the personnel costs plus 400,000 plus 15,000, but it's unclear what that 15,000 is for. So the question is whether that can be reduced from the budget.
Dorasa Pikila, Program Manager for Economic Development Program. I'm not aware of that $15,000. I'll double check with Marriott team and get back to you.
And I just want to be clear, and we can have would love to have a follow-up conversation with your thinking on this. This is, correct me if I'm wrong, this is supported by the profits from
revenue from
the
hotel,
hotel,
center, yeah,
or from
it's not
the
tax
conference
money.
center. And if it's a management committee issue, we should address it with Marriott at the management committee level before. And I'm not sure it's a council decision per se. If there's a discrepancy, we have a mechanism for addressing that.
Let's do this. We're gonna, if the committee's in agreement, we're gonna approve without objection what the county executive send us. If after you look into this even more, something comes up, please bring it to us before the full council, but it might be an internal issue that has nothing to do with us, as you mentioned. So if everybody's okay with that, without objection, we are approving this. And with that, this was the last item of the agenda, and this committee is adjourned. Thank you so much.